Right now with capitalism, all of the gains in automation, it goes to the owner class. All you have to do is have everyone be an owner, and now suddenly any gain in automation is a gain for everybody. If you grow just one thing, it may not grow as well as if it grows with another thing. A good example of that is called the Three Sisters method of farming.
There is definitely multi-apartment buildings or multi-families that do passive design.
$100 million that they gave to Joe Rogan that they would kind of be out if they breach contract. Is that a bigger number? Or is 2 billion a bigger number?
I don't know,
It's
Zach.
a tough one. I
It's
know.
really hard.
And maybe
Yes.
comparing numbers is not Jeremy's strong suit. Gotta go kill a Jenny.
I still don't think you should kill her. I don't think it's a good idea.
It's a ghost, dude. Welcome back, everybody, to Bread Theory. Tonight, I'm joined, as per usual, by the illustrious Dan Plaat of What's Left in Albany and the Three Left Show. How you doing tonight, Dan?
Just good. Feeling good. Watch some good
Nice.
media. I'm a little high on that. And sort of not so productive weekend, but at least it's been satisfying. I guess I'm ready for another week of drudgery. But I do plan on taking a day off.
That's good.
It is the week before Christmas, right? So
right. You work for the local government, right? So I would assume you get state government even. So I assume you get a big chunk of time off then.
Yeah, it's like half a day off for every pay period in vacation, sick time. Personal time is set at like 3 days. I've got a day left of that. I need to ask if it rolls over, like based on the year I started or the calendar year. I remember being told calendar year, so I'm like, okay, I need to use it this week or next. Because we only get like 2 Mondays off basically in a row. But with the nor'easter coming in the later week, though with the shifts in temperature, nor'easter like slush storms. I mean, it
sounds awful.
It's still in favor, but I'm okay with it. You just gotta keep your walk clean, and and wear good boots. And because then during the day it's like 40 degrees and it melts, so whatever. But it is going to get colder next week. It's going to go down to the teens and 20s actually. So looking forward to that degrees. Actually. Yeah, people can say I'm craving this or that outside, but I'm like, I ski. I know 3 layers. That's how you know a local from a transplant. It's like, of course you're cold. Are you're wearing a t-shirt and then your coat? Okay, yeah. Or you're wearing summer clothes and then you're putting a coat over that.
Right.
Else you're freezing. Yeah. Put a hoodie on between the two. It makes all the difference.
I mean, I hear that is a type of Minnesotan who will just wear that sort of stuff all the time, just out of, saying fuck you to the weather and like, oh, I'm hardy enough to withstand all this stuff. So, yes. Yep, there's year-round shorts.
Shorts in the 30s.
It's shorts in the 30s. Well, I mean, right now it's 5 degrees, and I still saw a guy go outside in just a t-shirt and shorts. So yeah,
nice. It's nice when it stays freezing because then it's like, look, it's not going to get messy. But then
it's that hovering around freezing that's really dangerous.
Yeah, that's where it gets. Especially for driving. But thankfully, even on a bike, I mean, it can be dangerous. Especially my tires are a little thicker, but
that's good.
Anyway, so we're to the kind of utopian journey of plans, ideas, and maybe tease out what can we critique, what can we learn from them, and how are we not just replicating the Owenism of the 19th century before the Communist Manifesto was written.
Oh yeah.
Because when it was the Travel Through Utopia book that I have, which Utopias pre 1940, they are all fanciful and impossible, especially try
Right.
to implement them. But then all the ideas of these utopians, Renaissance forward, they actually all came true in the bureaucratic state, in how the bureaucratic state sees society and functions. It's like the utopians were right, but not in the way they thought they would be right, because they were
Mm.
all kind of, at least as far as like more the original Utopia. Um, a lot of the Renaissance and Enlightenment utopias were like these, rational places where the state kind of, not the state runs everything, but like everything's just very ordered, and there's every face, everything has a structure, everything's figured out. Um, there's not a lot of freedom or creativity kind of happening.
Mm.
And that's why it's like, well, someone wants to say, well, what if we want to do something different? It's like they're going to be killed immediately,
Yeah.
or thinking that will be impossible.
Mhm.
And yeah, so that's and that's kind of how it feels when you're deep in the bureaucracy or the alienation of our society since in the 20th century. So
Mhm.
it's kind of an odd thing. So it's why utopianism kind of died, because it's just like it becomes punk, cyberpunk, solar punk.
Right.
Even the solar punk, you have this sort of with certain hippies and yuppies even, and new agers, a type of new utopianism that's just very much always a back to the land, starting an eco village. Sometimes the eco villages are
Right.
hard, but it's still very self-contained, or it's hard to. It's not an organization that seems to be able to scale up
Right.
in any fashion. Like that non-housing, like it needs state support. There needs to be like a legal structure to really make it explode, and not just be the motivated. It needs to be something that even non-motivated can jump
Yeah.
in, because it's in their interest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Economic.
Like
So
a self-perpetuating system. Yeah.
I want to start kind of going into a return to the ownership economy channel and talk about what calls like the blackmail of you have to
Oh.
choose between liberal bourgeois democracy, capitalship of the bourgeoisie, or fascism. And and it kind of I was seeing that in play in Star Wars. This is not the first time I've mentioned Star Wars, right?
No. No.
But I
Not at all.
was just watching the Tales of the Jedi, which was just released, or released a week ago, um, and similar to like the goal of corrupt capitalist republic that's corrupt, and then people want to break off from it, they want to escape it, they oppose it, but then it turns out they're actually all pawns, or both sides are pawns of basically a shady dude, Palpatine, a little rat,
Yep.
who's just self-interested prick,
Hmm.
and who literally delights in turning people to kill their friends, more than once, and trusts no one, and is never really happy. Well, actually, no, he's very happy. He's cackling. He's but
Yeah.
but whether it's the empire, so it seems the choice though between republic or empire, or whatever comes, or new republic even, is that you seem to be choosing between a republic that still has these greedy corporations and industrialism that destroys your planet, but it's facilitated through the senators and the Senate system, bourgeois democracy. And people like, okay, this is chaotic, it's corrupt. You fight that. This bring about an empire, or a consolidation of power, and then which is basically military dictatorship. And if anything, everyone gets even more economically exploited.
Hmm.
But it's through a centralized entity instead of
Yeah.
this distributed senators getting rich and whatever. Now all the corporations kind of serve at the behest of the empire, fascism.
Hmm.
And we haven't gotten too much of how the new republic economy works. is it different? Is it exactly? I mean, I think the new movies kind of say actually everything's back to normal before, where you have corporations and they now kind of serve no one but their own self-interest, capitalists,
Mhm.
and they fund the First Order, the fascists, and they want to get return to the Empire and the New Republic. They're playing both sides. So there's no Palpatine's a zombie, but like he's not like is he running everything? I don't know. It's not doesn't go into that. It's a fairy tale.
Interesting.
But it's the double blackmail if you have to choose one or the other, and there's never
Mhm.
ever a third choice.
Right.
And there is, at least in form of individuals, like Ahsoka Tano, a character who is a neither Jedi nor Sith. She is the white. She is the middle. And you have these characters who are the middle of like as far as the Force goes. Um,
The radical centrist. Yes.
Yeah, they kind of come across like that, but not quite. Like Ahsoka's definitely
That's good.
like she's an operator in the Rebel Alliance for its life cycle, and but doesn't serve the New Republic in any capacity. She's doing her own thing, um, but definitely serving good for its own sake, and that's sort of what the third choice or the solution is. Like just do good for good's sake,
Hmm.
and which isn't a structural critique of any kind, and since
No.
obviously doing that isn't enough because the people who also were motivated to do good for good's sake, like Dooku, eventually get corrupted in their quest to seek justice and redress. They,
Mm.
they're like, well, I have to work with Palpatine to, because he apparently agrees that everything's corrupt and needs to go or change. But the look on in the death of the rise revenge of the Sith that's mentioned by reactors that like the look on the actor's face when the Emperor says kill him and Anakin does it, and the look of like dismay and like holy shit, I've been played for the last 30 years.
Mhm.
Like he didn't give a shit at all about this. We're doing all of this war stuff, but it was all to basically reformat the Republic. Basically, that was in his head what he was doing, I guess. But in the Clone Wars series, there's slavery and all these other like terrible, terrible things. So anyway,
I see.
whatever.
Wow.
So let's get back to So play the first video.
Okay. Okay.
Did you
We'll do
have
that
that
one
up?
first. Yeah.
So,
Pulled it up.
but don't play it yet. Um, after, well, anyway, this sums up the last. By the way, I'm getting an echo through your
Oh,
speakers,
shoot.
which is normal, but usually you have it softer. But
Yeah.
I'm
Let me
hearing it
let me
more.
turn. Hold on. Let me turn you down just a little bit. See if that helps.
Okay, so the conclusion I came to, or that we came to while watching it, anyway, this meme sums up the problem he had while talking about capitalism, communism, or socialism. They're two sides of the same coin. They're both like there's a dualism there,
Yeah.
and they both like we need both at the same time. Half of his videos are going over how we kind of need both at the same time, but not a mixed economy, which just takes bits and pieces. We actually need to integrate them together. So that's kind of what was confusing us about
Yeah. That
like,
is
what
confused.
does he really want? And what he
Mm-hmm.
means is we need both at the same time because capitalism produces wealth, but socialism distributes it. How can we do both at the same time? This is what he goes to Hugo. Um, as a source for like in his later years he was kind of a socialist and or at least a reformer, and that's Victor Hugo,
Yeah.
the
I
writer.
assumed. Yeah.
And so play that meme, play that
Yeah.
wonderful footage.
All right. Roll that
and,
beautiful.
and I'll play into later too.
All right. Why is it not showing up here? come on
I
now.
got tired of all of them.
There we go. There's the one.
Oh, I'm not getting audio.
Oh no, I muted it. Try that again.
Socialism
Take two.
is when
when
the
the
government
government
does
does
stuff. And it's more socialism the more stuff it does. And if it does a real lot of stuff, it's communism.
So that was so constantly the speaker of ownership economics laying out his philosophy and basically political science 101, but through the lens of yuppie, basically, who sees basically government socialism is when the government does
It's just government taking over.
and worker ownership doesn't. Workers goes into his lexicon, but worker ownership doesn't actually come up, just ownership by people, right? And let's see, in one video, I'm not trying to go point by point through all of his stuff because I don't think we want to watch all of them. I don't want to watch them all again. And but let's see, there's just tons of little contradictions. So like he will mention how capitalism creates value or wealth, and that's good. But it does so through exploitation and so on. And and we need to like get people off of economic labor towards the non-economic labor, which is, I suppose, work that's for its own sake, for the arts,
for the good of people.
Yeah. So he talks of like automated luxury communism, but not without the communism, but he doesn't really go in that direction. It seems like if you know your stuff, like it seems like what direction is he going in? Because it seems like everything he says could be leading you towards many directions.
Sure.
And eventually he finally settles on what his actual like ideas are like in the real world are. So that's the video that you have brought up now.
Cool.
So we'll do that. We'll cover that now, which is his actually, theory to practice. So he's gone over the theory, tons of Eastern philosophy, kind of spirit science version of political science. Do you know spirit science?
I'm vaguely familiar with it.
Vosh kind of did the longest takedown, but basically, spirit science is a woo-woo channel of New Age that basically tries to, like, what if you took every mythology that exists and crammed it all together into one worldview? What if you attempted to do that? And spirit science is kind of what that looks like, and it is batshit. But it does make sense if you don't believe, if you want to reject all rationalism, objective science, and kind of just embrace subjectivity, I guess. I don't know. And no other format of knowledge. I'm sure papers could be written on it, but he also comes off as a scam artist at the same time.
Yeah, kind of seems like that. All right, well, let's get into it.
Transforming our economy will require patience, but if we build upon the right foundation, small and simple efforts can grow into sophisticated systems. Our desire should be to ensure the dignity of every human being. The source of dignity is self-reliance. We cannot have true self-reliance and dignity unless we have control and responsibility over the means of our support. Achieving ownership for every citizen is not just an
society. Then, when you mention self-reliance, so like that's the goal. It's not really like a society kind of belief, people should depend on each other, or people could depend on it. It's like, no, you gotta be self-reliant, because that's where freedom comes in, the ability to do what you want without people hindering you, which a lot of us kind of holds us back in relationships, at least with us single people.
Well, I mean, it goes against goes against human success for the past forever. We work together. That's how we
Since the
survive.
Renaissance.
Well, certainly since the Renaissance. But I mean, our survival strategy as a species is to work together and hedge our bets by relying on one another. But whatever.
Yeah.
Individual effort. To reach our full potential, we must work with others in our community. Communities that value self-sufficiency will strive to assist each other locally as much as possible and reject outside help that is not absolutely necessary. The capitalist system creates many unmet needs and false divisions, and these issues end up getting projected onto the national stage. But there is no reason why such needs cannot be met locally through cooperation. Individuals and businesses can pool their resources to build cooperatively.
Mm-hmm.
I just got to point that out. The reason is scale. There is something that limits. I don't want to say anarchistic politics, but just not even bottom up, because you are talking bottom up when you're scaling up. But
definitely bottom up.
Yeah.
Once you get to
you only need the bottom, you can flatten the pyramid entirely. It's like, but then you can't scale. You can't scale. You can't do industrial production.
Right, you're not gonna have large scale civilizations anymore. I guess we just abandoned the cities at that point, and
it's not like they are. This person is a primitivist, but there's a line of reasoning that leads you there that they're not aware of. So,
owned schools, financial institutions, business incubators, R&D centers, and social service organizations. All the obstacles that society faces can be overcome as people put their heads together and apply resourcefulness, perseverance, and ingenuity. In order for this to happen,
or we could just equitably distribute money and services and stuff and just do it.
No, that would be socialism. That's we've done that already, and it's that only solves the distribution problem. That leads to people being uncreative and losing the drive to work. He goes through that. He goes through capitalist talking points throughout his videos, and that's kind of where these guys are still libs to me, being in that they will argue against capitalism with all the talking points of capitalism, or they have questioned everything. They're thinking outside the box, as we were mocking before, but they have still not let go or unlearned, or they're still they're not outside that, still not actually outside the trash can of ideology, in that they have not actually questioned any of the narratives about state, society, socialism, what have you. They still are actually taking capitalist narratives for granted as being how things are.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We first need to know who we are. An essential step in building cooperative organizations is defining and strengthening the common bond, the unifying factor that binds people together. Today, the most powerful influence in society is the employment relationship. People go where the jobs are. The need for employment pulls people away from communities. We need to find ways to reinforce local institutions and other social ties that supersede the employment relationship. Our objective should be to help local groups reach their potential in terms of what they can accomplish. Individuals work within local groups to help each member succeed. These groups, in turn, can cooperate with other groups, leading to a network effect.
And people were untethered, like they got their income regardless of where they lived. This would serve the purpose, but he's not thinking in those terms. He's not thinking in terms of actual. It's funny that, like, with all the talk of common bond and whether he actually is not talking about a commons economy.
Right.
People still have to have these independent jobs, so it's about where, like, how we getting the jobs, and then we get to co-op strategy. Not to ruin it, but I am.
No, yeah. And if you're just leaving the edict of work or starve in place, then jobs are still going to be pulling people all over the place anyway, if that's their primary means of survival.
The video before this was taking care of the poor or needy, and I didn't watch that one. I skipped it. Because from what I was watching on the other videos, I was like, he's just going to talk about how to set up charity orgs or something.
Probably. Okay.
Cooperative networks are decentralized according to the principle of subsidiarity, but able to integrate and leverage scale when necessary to ensure the long-term prosperity of every member organization. So if you want to make something happen, the first thing you ought to do is form a study group. Meet together in person on a regular basis and learn the principles of cooperation. These study groups can eventually give rise to cooperative enterprises. Aspiring cooperators sometimes start off by discussing specific structures and strategies, but in the beginning, it's more important to make sure that you are aligned on values, principles, and goals. The next step is...
See, I don't think that's such a terrible...
So why did you list it
know.
out that way? Why was values last?
Well, true. Good
Where
question.
are you taking this list from? He's making the list.
Yeah. Yeah. But overall, it's not a bad idea. Get together with like-minded. I mean, you could look at this as a loose way to organize for anything. Get together with people that believe what you do.
Yes.
Study together and, make sure you're informed before you start acting.
Granted, I was privy to we were kind of a study group, but we only kind of did one Skype call together, and it was to start a pot-related co-op. Now, I wasn't really on board because I don't want to just start a pot co-op of some kind, but a co-op, whatever, I'll start anywhere. So that was the spirit I came in. I also didn't have a full-time job at the time, so I'm like, I guess I have extra time, even though I feel like I don't, because I just do a lot of little things. But if the others are kind of doing their part, then I will too. But of course, there wasn't much follow-up. There wasn't any at all, actually. But the thing is, it was kind of being coordinated by someone who was unemployed or at least not working, but being a stay-at-home dad, I believe, doing a lot of 3D printing. He was that kind of person, kind of being. But the other people involved were all like teachers or things, people with full-time jobs that are overworked. So I was kind of like in this meeting, I'm like, I'm not sure this is going to work because half of our people here, they're, they love the idea, but we do not have the means. And we're not even in the realm of like, the rules haven't been, I mean, we probably didn't convene in the half year since, because the rules weren't written yet, and we were kind of waiting on the rules coming out before we know what we could even do. Even we've focused not on having a storefront, but what if we were in the transportation side? That's kind of the advice I was getting. Don't be the flashy business, but be the kind that is needed, in between the supply chain.
Sure.
Because the point of the New York law was to create as many small businesses as possible. So it's not consolidated vertically. That way you can actually employ as many ex-drug dealers as possible or what have you. But but 6 months later, I had a full-time job and I just did not need this anymore. And I wasn't being called or messaged. So I didn't even have to make an excuse or an explanation of why I wasn't involved. Yeah. Okay. Let's continue. But otherwise, yes, forming a study group is the first step. Sometimes the study group does not go past that stage, like some DSA chapters, for example, DXAs. I just learned they had a study group. They were reelings. They were doing movie nights. But no. Sometimes they were doing canvassing, but it was probably a smaller core group doing that, just like 3.
For sure.
Is to start a business. In your group discussions, assess the needs and business opportunities in your community and identify possible resources that could meet those needs. Choose a business structure, make plans, and then carry out those plans. It's at this point that many groups hit some roadblocks. There are 3 practical constraints that we need to deal with. First, cooperative businesses tend to be undercapitalized. It's often the case that members aren't able to raise very much capital amongst themselves, and ideals prevent them from accepting outside capital from traditional sources, such as banks or venture capitalists. These outside sources are usually not interested in cooperatives anyway. Second, cooperators often lack the necessary skills and know-how. Running any business is difficult. It requires technical knowledge.
Skills, nunchucks, bow hunting, computer hacking, illustration dancing, and Wolverine hunting.
He has a good point.
It's funny.
We there are business classes for the, semi-employed, whatever, probably at your small business office or community orgs will do this. They want people. I mean, especially the ones that are, liberal nonprofits. It's like, and this is what this we're halfway into the video, and it's like this is reeking of, don't be a socialist, start a small business instead.
Yeah.
Which is why co-op strategy kind of gets not a full endorsement from me. Of course, I'll never oppose it, but and it is part of everything. It's valid, but some of the justifications for it, or rather what you do, is kind of reeks of just like, don't organize a union at your current workplace, quit and start your own business, outcompete capital. We'll outgrow them. We'll outcompete capitalism, as if this hasn't been tried before a dozen times. Or at least there was only growth in cooperatives when we're deep in depression. And then a decade later, we're not. And then all those cooperatives become regular S B Corps or S Corps before you know it.
Yeah, that's sad.
But yes, we do need all those skills, and I still don't feel like I have them. I probably need to take some. There are free courses. Maybe we could link to one of them. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Got one you want to send over?
Let's see. Let's we'll play the video. I'll
Sure. Yeah, take a look.
A particular trade. In addition, members need to have a thorough understanding of the organizational and management aspects of running a cooperative business. And third, those who organize cooperatives often choose the wrong types of businesses. We should keep in mind that ownership of productive technology is what gives us more leisure time and improves our quality of life. So to really make an impact on the local economy, we should focus on advanced technologies and manufacturing. But such enterprises require significant upfront investment and skilled labor. So to overcome these obstacles, we need to seriously think about how to develop tools and supporting resources that are focused on 3 areas: financing and business formation, education, and technology. The Mondragon cooperatives were able to create support organizations in each of these areas, and so we can look to Mondragon for inspiration and ideas. Because of these unique tools and the interlinking of their businesses, they were able to grow from humble beginnings into a massive industrial complex. To support the financing and formation of cooperative businesses, they created the Caja Laboral, a member-owned credit union. The businesses within the cooperative network were tied into the Caja through contracts of association. This created a large pool of available capital. It also allowed the Caja to have significant control over its member organizations. In the beginning, the Caja was very different from most credit unions today. It took on a proactive role in helping form new businesses. It also stepped in to help struggling businesses when necessary. Because of this, the failure rate for businesses in the network was very low. The Mondragon network also developed unique educational resources. The complex started off in the 1940s as a technical school where students were taught vocational skills as well as social principles. Later on, they created programs that allowed students to work and go to school at the same time, enabling them to gain valuable knowledge and experience while earning money to cover tuition and living expenses. Eventually, they formed an entire university. And technology has always been important at Mondragon, their ability to stay at the cutting.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Interestingly, this is what a lot of liberals kind of propose for education reform. It's like we just got to make high school like having a job in the market. That way, everyone's job ready.
It's vocational training.
They're not job ready now, and that's what matters.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah.
They're still thinking in terms of, it's weird. They're both say at the same time. We want them to be job or career ready, be prepared for the real world, as they put it, market, employment, have a career, be able to earn income, and they'll kind of have the liberal idea of education is about learning to be a learner, so you learn the rest of your life, which is universal liberal education. That's what it's about. So they kind of want both at the same time, which is sort of, they are in opposition, because liberal education is taking all of those non-marketable skills, which maybe you and me have, though you have some, right? As far as your speciality.
Sure.
But neither of our speciality is starting a business,
No, it
which
is not.
it's odd that Econ 101 is not like, that should be part of the civics portion of high school education, though civics, of course, usually doesn't exist in most high schools. Where it does, it's like there's so many things you want to cram in, there's just no time for it. So you really have to be really narrow. Like most high schools, school districts, they got to be really narrow about what they'll actually like have. And sometimes they'll try to integrate it into the curriculum themselves. Like we split the high school up into through 4 different schools, and one of them was called the Leadership Academy. So it's like those that are promising leaders or want to be leaders of some kind. This school will have maybe extra electives offered, or I don't even know how it really worked, but what it did was set up rivalries between students, which I dislike, but it was a way of organizing the 1,000 students.
Sure.
It started when I went to there, where it was like we had a North House and a South House, and it literally just created gang warfare dynamics in the poor students, where if
Right.
someone from North House had a class, or they were walking and it's literally one building, it's just split in half. And so if you walk on the
Oh.
wrong side of the building, you would get jumped. That was at its worst.
What?
That was at its worst. This
I
was
mean, it
also
sounds like-
probably a mirror of gangs that were all outside of school as well.
Oh,
But
okay.
they seem to make it about being like what house you're in. Like these were 2 cliques, like different cliques
Sure.
of friends that were, I don't know, fighting over girlfriends or something.
It's so silly. But I mean, it
Whatever.
sounds like they're already dividing you up into different classes if one group gets to be the leadership group. Like,
Well, the other's the STEM school, and the other's
Uh-huh.
maybe the ecology school, like the
cool.
environment.
So the ones that actually do the stuff and learn the things, invent things, and then the people that tell them what to do.
Yes. I will think of the ideas, and you will carry them out. Thank you for and that was my TED Talk. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Have you seen that satire? I have this little satire thing. I've taken the audio from it, where it's like a guy, it's like a car that runs on garbage.
Yeah.
People think that running a car on garbage is impossible. I say nothing is impossible. And it goes on like that for 10 minutes. And then like towards the end, it's like, I will create the ideas and you will carry them out.
Oh, that's great. That is so spot on for Ted.
All right. Now there is another video after this where he goes into, I can summarize it as just the local municipalist policy of creating, and this has been done in Manitoba, Canada, where you have a local government agency that does all the things, or tries to coordinate all the things that Mondragon did. So to tie in all these technical schools together. I mean, the BOCES, I don't know if you have these in the Midwest, but in New York, we have BOCES, which are multi-county adult education centers. So they'll have a campus about not the same size as a university, but like a college level size. And it will be basically technical schools. It will be a technical school. And for adults or those after high school. And because it's really not for somebody like who needs to deal with something in their spare time, it seems. Because I was looking up, because they do have kind of start your own business classes, but they have the electrician course and the carpentry and whatnot, and for actual career skills in specific industries, and so they would play a part, I assume. But to have all these different things, tie them together under an agency, and it's what makes up having a co-op policy on the local level. You elect us socialists. We want to carry out a co-op strategy. How do we do that? Well, we need a financing agency just for co-ops, because as far as not just because of this change of values, but co-ops are risky as far as,
Yeah.
well, how many co-ops are there in this state? Oh, not
Mhm.
many. There's not a lot of test
Yeah.
cases. There's not a lot of
On
data
test.
saying this works or there's demand for this. So, they're not going to lend
Yeah.
to it.
Even though if you look at the numbers, they fail much less often than traditional.
Sure. And that's the case. You can go with that case to the co-op, not the credit union. But let's see. I think I was just told secondhand that like they wouldn't go for that because there's just no co-ops upstate.
No, that makes sense.
Compared to downstate, and this is just in the realm of housing. Tons of housing co-ops downstate.
Yeah. Well,
in
sure.
the city,
New York City's pretty
in the metro
famous
area.
for it, but yeah.
In the metro area, but upstate, there's no cases, test cases, but as well as just
some of that's so silly. Like upstate is going to be
clout.
that much different in the way that it operates financially. That
Well, it doesn't have the density. It doesn't have the density. So without the density of tenants, because even our most densest neighborhood in the whole region here is basically the one I'm in, where we just have 3-story row houses.
Okay.
And it's just densest because we don't have any vacant lots in this 10-block area.
Cheek to jowl, yeah. Still, seems dumb to me. But yeah, let's finish it up.
The edge of technology is facilitated by an internal R&D department and a dozen technology centers. So if we want to replicate the success of Mondragon, we need to develop resources in these 3 areas. Achieving this is really a matter of catching the vision of what can be accomplished. A large oak tree starts off as a small acorn. Eventually,
Sure.
Closed captioning, rather. Filling
we
up
can
Apple's
build
screen.
large networks of worker-owned businesses that meet the economic and social needs of citizens at a local level. We can ensure that capital is rooted in communities, providing a sustainable source of jobs
That
as
should
well
be
as
the
a
roots.
reliable nest egg for retirees. We can eliminate poverty altogether. But the first step on this journey from theory to practice is to simply connect with the people around us and begin to have a discussion about these ideas.
So yeah, the previous episode was he covers Mondragon as being. So I guess I like this one more because this is where it actually talks about the whole there needs to be supporting orgs. So to have a co-op strategy, there's an actual policy here, though he doesn't express it in terms of what you would do in local government, but he's putting in terms of ignoring government, pretending it doesn't exist. But then how do you build these institutions? Like, I mean, I guess you could look to how Mondragon did it. You take these things that already exist, maybe apprenticeship programs, whatever. But at the same time, all those things are tied into the capitalist economy. You kind of need to start from scratch. But again, where do you get the capital?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you build the new world in the shell of the old, right?
Yeah,
so,
I like that strategy.
So let's. I gave you a link to a video. Hopefully, maybe we'll see how. I'll try to interrupt less. It's for resource-based economy. Originally from a really old kind of back to the lander type. From the 60s, we called it the Venus Project. And it's strange how over a lifetime he still couldn't start an eco-village to test out the ideas, or he did, but that's as far as he got, one eco-village. But I don't even know that. I don't even know. He calls it the Venus Project, and on all these videos about the Venus Project, they never mention an actual eco-village where they're testing the idea or doing it. So I'm kind of skeptical of RBE as far as like when all these people talk about it. Can you please just start an eco village then? Please. You just keep talking about it and you don't do it.
Yeah, right.
Now there's a channel called Moneyless Economy. Moneyless Society. And they're just a podcast mostly where they kind of talk to people doing eco village stuff. So there's a lot of links via them. And their show's kind of long, but the kind of ranting hippies.
I don't mind that sometimes.
We agree on 80% of things. there's just it was interesting when they had some guests on where like you had someone from Brazil kind of ask them, what do you think politics is? What definition do you have? And everyone mostly had a negative definition of politics. You know, people telling you
Yeah.
what to do or
Yeah.
oppression or something. And she was like, well, I see it completely differently. Politics is organizing together to get things done and make
Right.
decisions about our society.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that's what you want to do, right? So we need to be doing politics. And he had everyone she got everyone nodding.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this was a couple people who were, again, they wrote 4 books to lay out their like vision of basically how they would run an eco village. And I'm like, good luck getting 15 people to like go in with that. And it didn't
Read all the
help that
books,
their
yeah.
visuals. And the thing with a lot of the Venus Project and all the visuals of RBE, they're all so sparse and lifeless. It's like
Oh,
it's
yeah?
supposed to be a humanistic society that you're envisioning, and then you're just showing like these Star Wars type, Coruscant environments where you don't even see people or plant life. Like at least render some landscaping in your eco village. They just plop these like model houses down in a circle, and like why are they even in a circle? There's not
Yeah.
like where's the like are they arranged based on an orientation based on the houses you have there? It doesn't look like it matters at all. And then there's like barely any landscaping between them. It's like, yeah, maybe we'll see it in this video, but I don't know, but maybe.
Cool.
And there's chapters, so you could skip around based on your interest. I haven't
Sure.
watched this one, by the way. I'm cold.
A resource-based economy, or short an RBE, is a new social-economical model that is very different
Their
from
audio
the
is always
monetary system
terrible.
we know today.
That really is
In
bad.
a RBE,
Very
there's
tinny.
money, country, government, police, military, companies.
It's
or
it's
ownership of
it's
any kind.
fixable.
In a RBE,
but
the
you gotta
goal is
know what to do.
provide for the highest possible standard of
I
living
can't say
for
that I
everyone
do.
on Earth, while preserving the habitat. The current monetary system's goal is to maintain consumption, to secure the movement of money. It is basically an incentive system and a distribution architecture. In a RBE, all goods and services are abundantly available for everyone for free. In a RBE, ownership is replaced with access. We can think of an RBE as a big public library of goods and services. Now let's imagine for a moment that you live in an RBE. And let's imagine that you meet with your friend and you spontaneously decide to play tennis together. The weather is good, so you decide to lend some bike from the nearest bike station. You bike to the tennis court facility where you return the bikes to another bike station. Tennis rackets and balls are freely available at the tennis court facility. You have a lot of fun with your friend, and when you stop playing, you return the rackets and the balls back to the facility. Now you and your friend decide that you are both hungry, and you take the metro to another part of the city where you eat high quality food at a fully automated restaurant for free. But how can everything be free? How is that even possible though?
Have you heard of library socialism?
I mean, that kind of makes sense. Just like everything is pooled instead of us each having individual this, that, and the other thing. We just pool. It's like a tool library or that sort of thing. And
It is more efficient. It's only workable if every neighborhood literally has a community center with all of these things, though.
yeah,
Or I mean, I guess in case of tennis courts, it would be multiple neighborhoods, like a larger park. And you have to go to that park. Maybe you're assigned it, but maybe it doesn't matter. You're just not going to have your own customizable bracket. But there are many
Right.
cases where you can imagine people need a customizable version of something.
Sure.
So there is those questions with library socialism, but obviously we're kind of just talking about a base level of economic floor here. There's always room for customability later.
I think some of this also depends on, what is your view of how responsible an average citizen would be in this case? Is everyone going to actually put back the tennis rackets, or are some of them just going to destroy them, or,
Well,
take the bikes for a joyride and end up in the canal?
We're assuming we're all in a different mindset. of
Yeah.
abundance, and I don't need to steal. I don't need to take this racket home because, like in the same way of, because I can expect that there will be the rackets will be
True.
there. Then
True,
on the other
and that
hand, yeah,
definitely eliminates a lot. But then it only takes one asshole who just gets their kicks out of ruining other people's fun to.
yeah, we're thinking about that, but let's think of how many like our society produces assholes, right? So
True.
as we
True.
transition, there will be fewer and fewer assholes, and you can kind of see this in communities with these, based on values. People move to a community based on values. There are fewer assholes, and when there is one, they actually get punished, and your economics can take into account that we need X surplus for people who break stuff easily, or they're Mr. Magooing it up, or whatever, or they actually take it because they're they have some problem.
Yeah.
Um,
Because the cafe, the mass
Yeah.
transit, that all makes perfect sense. There's no reason why that stuff couldn't be
yeah,
free right now.
utopian thinking certainly doesn't makes a point to ignore all the ways things go wrong, but to focus on how things can go
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
And thus, it's revolutionary optimism instead of
Yeah, there's some value, even if it wouldn't play out that way necessarily.
But think about the issues that, it's called. We use the term library socialism to point out that libraries work. They do not suffer
True enough.
all of these problems of the tragedy of the commons.
True.
For more or less. I mean, the maybe the tragedy of the commons is that certain libraries, depending on your environment, depending on what city you're in, the library is being overloaded. Usually, there's whatever public institution exists has to take on everything that a
So
commons
much, yeah.
should. Like there's so many, like the commons. There needs to be commons for everything, but instead we only have a commons in the library and the school. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe not even in the school, because the schools close at 5.
Sure.
The buildings are closed. They can't afford to keep the lights on longer than that. They could be hosting programs all evening. They could be, have community centers, but maybe they're not, because they don't keep. That would require paying people, having whatever, keeping the doors open. But libraries also, again, in certain neighborhoods, are the only public bathroom. So for the homeless or the people who need bathrooms, they're coming into the library just to use the bathroom, and or to get out of the cold.
Right, I was going to say that too.
So,
only public warm space.
So our main branch library has quite of a, I'm not going to call it a homeless problem, but just issues where you have people who really need more help than a library can provide.
Could be better served.
Yeah, right, exactly. Better served is opportune, and yeah.
Right on.
The concept of money and exchange have been brainwashed into people's minds since childhood. That's why it can be very difficult for most to understand that a world without money is possible. Money is primarily used today as an incentive for people to do work, even if they don't feel like it. If production and distribution was automated and human labor was replaced with machines, then there would be no need to push people to do unwanted tasks. Therefore, no need for money. In our RBE, all
RBE really seems to depend on mass automation. I wish any kind of utopian does not project technological development that has not occurred yet. It kind of needs to be based on what do we have now, what can we do now. Now we can make the argument that, of course, we can automate everything now. Capitalism actually prevents full automation. We could automate everything, but so many people do need to be paid for their labor. They need to be wage slaves, that actually a lot of people oppose going full automation because we wouldn't get the benefits. Only capitalists would. But at the same time, capitalists are automating everything they can. So that's kind of where it's like, well, could we fully automate? Because if we could, would the capitalists be doing that?
True. Yeah.
And in some cases, they are when it comes to the truckers and the cashiers and so on.
Yeah. I mean, the other side of that too is the more you automate, the more repair people you need to have. And until you have an automated repair system where robots can all just repair each other, I suppose.
Yes.
Like, you have to have human operators that are pretty highly skilled. So that probably is one of the things that holds back more automation. It's
America's lack of engineers, which is kind of why there's so much stress on STEM fields, because we actually, compared to China, we do not have enough engineers. But the difference is engineers, meaning people who fix things, people who work with their hands, engineers who are actually kind of doing more manual labor, production labor. We are training people in STEM fields, but only incentivizing them to do software, to code, to make software, to do
that's the sexy stuff too.
To work at a desk, to work in a job where they can work from home. Because this is what's incentive, this is what the market, this is what the good jobs are. It's not being in a clean suit making semiconductors. It isn't being a mechanic for automated factories. That could be unionized, but it usually isn't, because those are new positions being made.
Or they're just like, they outsource it. They do independent contractors and stuff like that, especially if it's stuff that infrequently needs work. So
it's feast or famine, or it's just, by engineer, I guess I mean mechanic.
Right.
And those are the jobs that are fighting just to have sick time, as far as trained mechanics go.
Good point.
It's not a job I was looking into having as a career.
Oh yeah.
But no, I'm saying I wasn't trained
you wasn't.
to. I haven't been incentivized to. And so on.
Gotcha.
Jobs are replaced with automation. The relatively few necessary remaining jobs will be gladly occupied by volunteers. It is highly likely that these jobs will be in scarcity, because it is our nature that we like to help.
I wouldn't assume it wouldn't need to be volunteers either. I think it's just more like we're required to do 2 hours a week.
Yeah,
but we all have to have mechanics skills though, but that's kind of where it's becomes specialized.
Sure.
And it's like, well, how do you pick who volunteers? Basically, who would volunteer to do the specialized labor? Because it's like, to be efficient, it should just be a small group of people.
Sure.
And it's like, someone has to sacrifice their free time. That's not fair. That's what they're going to be saying.
Yeah, I think how Ursula K. Le Guin solved that in The Dispossessed was, there was this concept called 9th day work, and it was on the 9th day of your job rotation or whatever it was, you did something that you didn't really want to do, just because you knew it was good for the community. So,
that comes up in Paracom or something like that. Yeah.
Work that feels meaningful and that contributes directly to everyone, including the habitat. People from the US and UK contribute in 2012 3 hours on average a week for volunteer work, despite that they had to maintain their normal job. So the argument that nobody would work if they didn't have to is a myth. And RBE has many.
That's all non-economic labor.
But not the same.
Okay. So this is how it's not communism, okay? It's not communism.
Huh.
I'm curious.
Okay.
I'm curious.
Communism was primarily based on a moral idea, while in our RBE, we primarily use science and logic to guide our decisions. In the time of communism, there was scarcity.
I fucking love that. As if the leftist tradition was not constantly harping on how it's scientific, we're being logical, we're actually we are following rationalism here. It's rational that labor is where value is produced, and labor needs to be compensated to have its production. It's a myth that communism is like, it's leftist. Oh, I mean, is the left today, the liberal left, are moralistic. And so it's like all leftism must just be based on a moral outrage, you know, and it's not there's nothing scientific or rational about
Right.
any of it. I
Well, the
hate
idea that
it so
it's
much.
just moralistic too. No, it was the idea that there's a hell of a lot more of us, and we actually control, the machinery
Yes.
of the world. So just logically, if we felt like it, we could take over. That was the idea, not just it is the workers' right to do this. I mean, there was, of course,
Yeah.
that too, but
That's how it comes
yeah,
across in the historical or the high school essays.
yeah,
But
right.
this goes to kind of what I was saying last time, where or the theme of you have people who are really actually communists, but because they still subscribe to a capitalist dogma of some type, they can allow themselves to say, no, I'm not communist. I'm for this other thing that's totally different, not communist because of this thing,
Yeah.
like being
Yeah.
being technocratic, basically.
Mhm.
RBE is technocratic communism at the end of
Yeah.
the day.
I mean, yeah, it seems that way so far. So,
Because it's always this kind of cabal of technocrats who seem to be advocating for it, or kind of who would implement this. How would a social movement create a resource-based economy? And they're really scant on the details. They just kind of have a prefigurative approach, I guess, of we'll start some eco villages that practice
yeah.
our economics this way, even though, of course, an eco village has to participate in the market economy somehow. There's no way it can be completely off grid
Sure.
unless that is how they're doing it. They're doing an eco village completely off grid. Well, guess what kind of social political power that has?
Hmm. Yeah, zero. So, but I mean, there to have this sort of resource-based economy, you have to reset the rules of acceptable commerce and acceptable business organization. You basically have to outlaw capitalism. Um, and so you need a government to do that. So basically all he's talking about is state socialism again. So
But no, it can't be that. It can't be that.
I know
So
he says it can't be that, but that's
they
what
put themselves in a box where, even though, like, the only way to implement, but that's the thing, that's why they get stuck. The only way to implement their ideas is with the state,
right.
and they won't allow themselves because they're all anarchistic in their mindset. They think a community organization is enough to enforce these things.
But I mean, if a community organization becomes the dominant form, then it's just the state on a smaller scale. So like, you don't get around the state issue.
Right. You have to deal with it. You have to deal with
Yeah.
it somehow.
Yeah.
Even if you're a Chaz, the
Mm-hmm.
thing, like, Chaz didn't go all the way. They didn't do a full Paris Commune because they didn't say no. The owners of these blocks, you actually don't have any ownership rights now. They didn't do
Right.
that. They still
No.
they still had this thing where you had landlords or people who own the buildings. They were landlords.
Mm.
They they were the ones that went to the city and said, you got to get rid of these punks and bring in the police because they're
Right.
impeding me, even though they didn't actually take their property and say, no, this belongs to Chaz now. Which is why, like, I was like, Chaz isn't going to last more than a month. I think it was less than that. It was really short lived. Because it was basically an occupied encampment, but it was even less secure because it was using some non-public property, but wasn't really. That's kind of what was odd about it. I mean, it was closing off the streets and using streets as public property, which is more transgressive than the Occupy movement was. But that meant you kind of needed to go all the way with self-defense, because, like, if you're going to transgress on the state like that, you got to fight them. But they obviously weren't willing, and probably wisely not going to. Because because even Star Wars, you have Moff is like, no, we can't fight the Empire yet. We're not strong enough. We need at least 100 systems. We only have 3.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Continuing on.
In RBE, we create abundance with the help of technology that was not available in the time of communism. History shows that communism was never implemented ideally according to its ideology. In fact, communism looked more like socialism because of the use of money. In our RBE, there is no money, and government is replaced with an open source, decentralized, collaborative computer system. In true
So a classless, stateless, moneyless society, which in no way is communism, by the way.
No. I'm not for that. I'm for a classless, moneyless, stateless society. Have you ever seen that comic? I think I referenced it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we're repeating our own jokes.
Right.
communism, there is no money. And the strongest criticism of communism is that it removes the incentive for people to work harder than they
Well, he's talking
absolutely
about
have to.
actually existing socialism,
Right.
actually existing socialism versus communism as a ideal.
Is it yeah, a goal.
Yeah, but RBE is also
and
just an
state.
ideal. And I'm sure once
Absolutely.
those eco villages are up and running and they don't go anywhere, they'll say, well, they weren't doing it right. They were still attached. They were still using money. They were still in the market economy or something. They weren't truly off grid, which is but even then, it's like there'll probably be some form of currency. Like as far as going moneyless and building moneyless society, I love time banks because it's still currency, but it's not the dollar, and it's definitely not a capitalist currency.
Yeah, it's
So I think
definitely
that's
a much more flattening influence on.
that's kind of where I think
Hierarchies.
we need transition steps, right? We need
Yeah.
transition steps,
I'm all
and I
for
think having economies or I'm sorry, currencies like local currencies. But I think we need currency. That's what cryptocurrencies got really meant to be before it was
Yeah.
commercialized. It is
Yeah.
meant to be a currency for operating outside of capitalist markets.
Right.
So, and even for transactions that aren't even market based. But the problem was we don't have any businesses or economy to actually use cryptocurrency properly.
Right.
If there were enough co-ops where it's like we're going to do all of our transactions through using crypto instead of dollars, because there's enough of us and we can have our own trade network and our supply chain can be completely co-ops, or we can form a federation, a syndicate, if you will, and use a cryptocurrency. Then that would be an actual applicable use of cryptocurrency instead of it being a asset commodity. So that's speculative. So and that's what I say whenever we talk of crypto and is it really all just a scam? Well, the original idea was not
original
how
idea
it
was
was
not a
implemented, because it was an idea that isn't being used in tandem with what it's meant to be used, because otherwise it's just being used as in black market trading, not cooperative anti-capitalist trading, because maybe the hackers that came up and propagated the idea and developed it, they just weren't anti-capitalist enough. In fact, they all turned into capitalists because they weren't anti-capitalist. They had no socialist ideology whatsoever, so they just became capitalists, but more libertarian or not. They want to be anti-corporate, but then act like corporations.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of faith in crypto anymore, but do you still think it's possible to use in any sort of
It
better
could be.
way?
It's likely ruined. I'm just saying that if it were ever be resurrected, there is I've yet to invest in it really, but there's Faircoin that was set up by an anti-capitalist for anti-capitalist online trading. So by trading, I mean, what do you call it? Exchange.
Sure.
So, and Faircoin is based on an actual dollar assets that he stole from banks. He basically committed a bunch of bank robberies.
Whoa.
And not by gunpoint. Not by gunpoint. He just took out a bunch of loans at the same time with no intention to pay them back. And he is in fact on the run, laying low, and in Europe somewhere.
Wow.
Faircoin. So I've yet to create my own Faircoin wallet, but it was an intention of mine 2 years ago, I think. And I just dropped that intention since it seemed low priority. Because who would I be using it with? That's the problem. Like, it's like Mastodon. Once you have the wallet, who can you buy from? And there just need to be enough vendors who are just along with maybe using other currencies, including PayPal, but also accepting Faircoin. But in that way, it seems like a consumerist thing. It's like I'm using the money that isn't dollars, but I'm doing all the same things. So it's not really leading to a new economy. It's just a tool, and the tool needs to be it's for the right project. And I don't think we have the right project. But there are socialists who advocate or they talk about what the right project would be. Not just cryptocurrency as much, but use of blockchain.
Blockchain, yeah.
Set up
Open ledger
contracts
Mhm.
that outside of a market economy. Because otherwise, you need lawyers and you need a state to enforce those contracts. What if
Right.
we use blockchain to, I don't know, create a net of accountability
Mhm.
that was decentralized, and thus not a state,
Right.
but a horizontal situation.
Mhm.
Blockchain
Interesting.
socialist, I think they're called.
Okay. Cool.
It also leads to resentment of those who work less but receive the same. This is not a problem in the RBE. Tasking and repetitive jobs are done by machines, and the rest of jobs are done by volunteers. The
Soviet
incentive
Union's
to
problem
do a
was they didn't
job is
automate
because
enough.
it's meaningful and because it has a direct positive impact on everyone, including the one doing the job. In the RBE, we replace ownership with access. Access-based instead of property-based help us to minimize the amount of resources we use. For instance, everyone owning their own car that is used in average 5% of the time and parked 95% of the time and occupy parking space is not really efficient.
Yes,
But
car
this is the
sharing.
reality today.
I plan on doing it myself.
Instead, it would be better to share all cars. Because less cars are needed, we save materials and
Do they all
energy
have to
on
look the
production.
same?
Materials
Yes, they all have to look like
Why
a,
do you have to
a
draw? Why do you have to use the same car model? Come on.
lowercase n.
and energy that could be used in other places to enhance the living standards of everyone.
Oh, yes, and they have to look like
Almost
future
all
cars.
I mean, you have to look like the future, otherwise, what are you even doing?
What if they all
criminal
looked
acts
old?
Yeah,
But they all had
throwback.
biodiesel engines.
There you go. How about that?
and human suffering today can be linked to poverty and inequality. In fact, crime and poverty is a structural problem due to the current monetary system and is referred as
I
structural
don't know. It sounds like
violence.
Kami Pinko
It is
talk to me.
It's kind of unfortunate arrangement of pictures there too.
How
Like,
so?
the-
Oh, because the
it's
gun's
just-
pointing at the kid. The person.
well, the gun's pointing at the guy who is like holding his hands and like, but
and,
then
and his legs.
but then
at
his
the bottom
legs are
half of his
backwards,
body.
and yeah, he's got 4 arms somehow.
Estimated that structural violence kills more than 20 million people each year. This could easily be avoided. For instance, there's more than enough food for everyone, but the structure inhibits some people from buying food because they don't have enough money. In our RBE, there's no poverty, and all basic human needs like clean water, food, shelter, clothing are provided for everyone. In our RBE, material equality is achieved by providing everyone with the same standard of living.
Could you skip ahead to the end since we're kind of, or what are the chapters? Is there like
Oh, let's see
a
what we got.
how do we get their chapter?
Sustainability, resource accounting,
Well, that
durability,
could be.
resource accounting.
Yeah, let's just cover that one. Durability goes without saying. Yes, the goods will be more durable because they're not being made for
In our
obsolescence.
RBE, we recognize
Right.
that Earth's resources are finite, and that some materials are more abundant than others. In our RBE, an ongoing resource accounting ensures that we know what we have in the current moment, both locally and globally. Abundant materials are preferred and used first. Constant resource accounting enables us to be flexible.
But then if you
so we can
use
adjust
the abundant thing for everything, eventually you won't have much of it then. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's my thought about like, well, we can use wood for all this. Like, and once we run out of regenerative forest land, what then?
Right.
Or let's say it's kelp farms or something like that.
Sure.
I guess it's hard to run out of ocean, but I just again, there's an issue. I think there's like even this RBE advocate hasn't let go of like there's still this kind of feeling of like there's still economic growth. There's still like we want to keep up the standard of living and resource use that we do now, though of course that's not really the intention. So I'll almost shut up.
No. Yeah, good points.
Production to use another type of material if the one we are using becomes scarce. Materials free due to recycling are as well accounted for in the system.
Well, that's a problem.
Plus, every time, for instance, we cut down a tree because we need wood, we need to plant a new tree to preserve the habitat.
Oh, that just reminds me of the terrible talking points of people that I've debated about clear cutting before. They're like, well, they plant 2 trees for every one that they cut down. It's like, yeah.
And you destroyed habitat that basically
in
will
the
lead
process
to die off. And if everything dies off in that gap between the clear cut and the new growth, I mean that's yeah.
Not to mention, I mean, they tend to plant a certain kind of tree that is fast growing that they can then harvest faster.
Yeah. And then it's on the monoculture.
So there's that too, and it's a monoculture
tree. Yeah,
but also,
right.
2 little twigs in the ground do not equal, a 100-year-old tree that you've just taken out. So, in any sense of it, it does not have the same function in the ecosystem.
Sorry. Well, you can finish, but
it doesn't sequester carbon. Yeah, all that sort of thing. Yeah.
So something that all the resource-based economy advocates have, and they do seem to have the most videos because of the zeitgeist movement, and very popular in the internet citizen, always online type, but not always online. But I mean, it seems to be a low-hanging fruit for those who are tech-focused because they love automation and tech utopias, and but haven't done the research in other areas like politics, ecology, and whatever. So they kind of have a lot of expertise, or I mean, maybe they have some knowledge of the technical side, or it's what they like, it's what they're passionate about, and it's like, and it's environmental, and they're not good at articulating the other sides of things because it's not their passion. They haven't done the readings. They've done a very shallow. They have a shallow understanding of all these other things. So they always come off as being really shallow in their thinking because it is. Even though talking about automation and job complexes, like these are things that we can go deeper into because there are others who have done all of that work. But RBE continually, even after decades, just seems stuck on this. We'll automate everything. We'll have a ledger of resources. So that's what it means, resource-based economy. We just start with the commons, with the resources in the commons, and we just organize our economy based on that. Yeah. And computer planning, very top-down, centralized planning to have a library economy. And which is like, the Addende experiment, so to speak, and that's so it integrates with that.
What is the Addende experiment? I'm not familiar with that.
The president of Chile, who was taken down by Pinochet and the CIA, and his first he had an economic plan for Chile, a 5-year plan, if you will, or at least if his term was 4 years, but it was to implement using computers. And this is back in the 80s. To do economic planning, and it was kind of to focus based on economic needs and poverty reduction, and using computer modeling to do that. So, but he didn't get the chance to do that because that would actually present a challenge to the capitalist hegemony as the Soviet Union was collapsing or on its way out. Because he was kind of saying we're going to do a new type of socialism, or we're going to do socialism with computers. So we don't have to rely on a class of bureaucrats. They'll have their own power base.
And that just points out that the way this guy's presenting is, oh, you just go ahead and we just do it. No, they will fucking kill you if you try to do this. Just
They
out of
all do
nowhere.
it, but they also
Yeah.
don't talk of taking state power, and they don't talk about how to really implement it unless it's in an eco village scale. But in that case, the resources in your economy is just for 50 acres, and that's you're not going to have any industrial production from that. Sorry.
Indeed.
And so how can you'll be basically subsistence farmers, but with a computer. So maybe it'll be well managed, but
Sure.
there are family farms that have computers and they manage their farms, and they're having a rough time. And even whether they're doing regenerative farming or not, they burn out. And I just got a taste of that from someone who is acting as a CFO for one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, especially the ones that are trying to compete with, other commodity producers, ones that are not diversifying and doing niche stuff. And
they got big.
There's no way they can ever meet their
present.
Prices or distribution or whatever.
It's like selling. It's like a seller being a seller on Amazon.
Exactly.
You're on borrowed time. And these are people with pretty sizable farms.
Right. Yeah.
But even they're very, very precarious.
Right. Absolutely.
So it's good.
This is called dynamic equilibrium. It sounds logical, but we don't follow this logic today in our current monetary system. The decision due to where products should be produced today comes down to where it's most money cost efficient.
Did he draw this himself?
For instance, food today...
There is a program you can get that has this hand, like you type out the text and then the hand draws it out. I got to assume that's it.
Yeah, okay.
The US travels an average 2,400 kilometers, or 1,500 miles.
I would just animate it to fade it in or something like that.
Yeah, the hand is a bit distracting, I got to say. But
locally to reduce energy cost and pollution due to transportation. In our RBE, fruits and vegetables will most likely be grown in...
Okay, can we...
I always hate when they show these towers of the vertical farm. Oh, it's just
that's
so
not
ridiculous.
A vertical farm. That's not a vertical farm at all. And even if it was like that, those are vertical farms are actually very inefficient. They use an enormous amount of energy. That's never factored into they're always the go-to for people who are being shallow about it. They have not actually looked at the data or the experiments of vertical farms, and it's fanciful. Rather, it's unserious. Even to those who are also ignorant about it. So maybe you'll get some buy-in from the ignorant, but there's a feeling that if this was commercially viable, it would be done more often, and it is.
Have unlimited, unlimited farm space. But
but if it is not commercially viable because we need to value other types of production like efficiency over capitalist efficiency, but it's it's almost like saying, well, this can only work if we have massive subsidies from the government, and that can be true for R&D in many areas, and it's how a commons would work. But then there's a level of if this isn't working on any level in any sector now, even little bit, why would it work when we have communism?
Yeah, right. It makes no sense. I mean, just from an engineering standpoint, just imagine the load fluctuations between a fully irrigated crop on each floor and one that's drying out.
Well, you're using aeroponics, right? You're using
I suppose
or aquaponics. But again, that's a lot more energy than people think. People think that's all very low energy intensive, but really, guess putting things in dirt is actually the least energy intensive.
Yeah, and I mean, you got to pump the water all the way up all those floors. You could find more land just getting rid of most parking lots, right? So
I know. There's a thing about land value, but I guess there's a confusion about building tall is when the property value is so high it's the only economically viable thing to do is build tall on it. Otherwise, you don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's why a
Yeah.
vertical farm, like say in a city, it's like that area would be not just capitalist utility, but any kind of utility. And
Mhm.
that's why there's people in architecture school like kind of doing vertical farms. And that's why I was first kind of scratching my head about like, is this really the best way of using this land? Like to say like, oh, but we can have a little grocery store in the bottom, and it's a food center. I'm like, ugh, it's not. This is not the best project. It looks cool, but it's also like, I'm not even seeing how the sun orientation thing is going to work.
Right.
Uh,
It's fanciful, not a lot of real world thought.
a short
or application.
factory setting, is fine.
Mhm.
We're not talking about any kind of industrial indoor farming. We're just talking
Right.
about that, I suppose.
Right.
Farms.
Anyway.
Vertical farms take
Yeah,
up
there
much
we
But
less
I want to
space.
go. Can you check the other chapters to see if we have any?
Yeah, let's see what else we got.
How did
So we got durability, standardization, phone blocks,
I mean, it's all basically like a
collaborative
checklist
design,
of
delivery.
techno utopia stuff. It has nothing to do with whether it's resource-based economy or not. That's the thing. All of this is technically also deliverable by capitalism. If the billionaires get enough money, that's what effective altruism is.
Sure.
If Elon has enough billions, then he will build he'll start a company for vertical farms, and it'll be just as successful as the Boring Company.
Yeah.
Which is actually also saying it will be successful if it gets massive government subsidies. So the government
Right.
needs to
It
pay
get
for
massive
it
government
anyway.
subsidies. Yeah, he'll put up one building, and you'll have to own a Tesla and show proof in order to purchase food there.
And you'll buy it with crypto Elon
Some
bucks.
argue
Right,
that an
yeah.
RBE is an imaginary place which everything is perfect, an utopia.
Ooh, quick aside. Speaking of Elon Musk, he's put up a poll on his Twitter now, which
Yeah,
he
what?
claims he will abide by the results of, saying, "Should I step down as CEO? Yes or no?"
Oh,
He says,
totally.
"Yeah." He
Totally,
says,
he'll abide by that. Sure.
"Yeah, right. I know. It's at 58% yes last time I checked, and there's 11 hours to go. But hey,
That's still
get
pretty
your votes in."
low. I figured that would be a
I
lot higher.
know.
But he still has a
Oh,
lot of fans, a lot of
yes, he
shows.
does.
And but he's just trolling. He's just trolling.
I'm sure.
I get
Well, no.
it's weird. It's hard to tell if he's really insecure and he's having a breakdown, or he's just having the time of his life. Maybe
I
he's like
mean,
maybe he's like Sidious, and he's just like, yeah, I'm crashing Twitter, so I don't have to pay the debts on it. I'll
Yeah.
sell it again to
There you
someone
go.
else, so who can strip mine it,
Hmm.
and then I'll make out like a bandit and
That's right. Generated tons of
cackle.
publicity for his other endeavors.
cackle. Right.
Yeah.
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 Totally.
Work in real life. An RBE is not a finite system where everything is perfect. There is not such thing as perfection. There is always room for improvement, but it can seem like this because an RBE is much better than the current monetary system we have today. It is important to understand that
But he
an
barely
RBE
explained it.
embraces
So this isn't it's just this video, by the way. This is like I've checked out other RB videos because I've been looking throughout the week for like the right one.
Mhm.
There just isn't. There's
Sure.
none of them are good. I wish there was like an ideal one where they actually kind of explain, but I guess the best version is Peter Joseph's 1 hour lectures. That's
Yeah.
Peter Joseph's the guy who explains it best. He's the one who
Yeah.
actually kind of goes into the actual dynamics and the the technical. It's like it is computer calculated, centralized planning. He doesn't lie. He doesn't obfuscate about it. He doesn't say it's not communism. I think he just says
Don't
it's.
worry.
He doesn't. I don't think he was doing that when he was kind of on tour with the idea. Like he was on the Young Turks, and Czech was saying like, "Isn't this just communism?" And he says like, "Well, I'm not denying it, but it is. But it is a commons economy system." I forget what his
Mhm.
answer was. Maybe we could look that up, but I don't
Yeah,
want.
yeah.
I don't want to take the
Exactly.
time right now.
Yeah, for sure.
But maybe I do. Peter Joseph.
Well, you're looking that up. We'll continue to see if they actually
Yeah.
explain a little more.
change. And as our understanding of the world changes or improves, the RBE is adjusted. The monetary system is against change. In fact, it has self-preserving mechanisms that prevents any change from happening. In our RBE, we align with the laws of nature, or the best understanding of the laws of nature at the current moment. It is not a question of choice. Nature is a dictatorship. Either we align or we perish. But what about human nature? Stop judging yourself and others. If you feel people are egoistical and self-centered, it is because they have been raised in a culture that promotes that behavior. Crime and violence is a structural problem, not a human nature problem. Instead, try to imagine a culture with less stress and where collaboration is promoted. But changing our current monetary system to an RBE is extremely hard because we are all victims of culture. An RBE is challenging for most people on how they understand the world. Furthermore, it is often seen as a threat because it imposes a radical change in people's values and beliefs. And most people have a
You getting
powerful
anything
identity
interesting?
with the current monetary system.
Not
An
especially.
RBE is an extreme threat on people's identity. For instance, people identify with their job. Let's say you're a lawyer. Being a lawyer is a high status profession, and you get a lot of validation and respect from your family, friends, and even strangers. You see being a lawyer as an achievement. You spent the last 7 years educating yourself, going through school, so much struggle. Now you have been a lawyer for 10 years working hard. Now somebody comes along and tells you about an RBE. It is only natural that you feel some resistance to it. You feel threatened, uncertainty arises about your status and place in society. You feel like you have something to lose. Maybe all of this happens on an unconscious level.
Yeah, because you have a bullshit
When
job.
people are strongly against
Right.
an RBE, it
You
is
read bullshit
likely
jobs
just
and,
a
you know.
defense
Yeah, that's a good one.
mechanism. If you want to know more about a resource-based economy, I invite you to check out the Venus Project or Peter Joseph. I will put a couple of links below. And if you have any questions regarding this video
Okay,
or about an RBE,
Oh my god, that just looks like a cruise liner that's just been turned into a open circle.
I can't tell you how many times. Well, I could tell you maybe like 10 times on one of the main solar punk pages, Solar Punk Society or something, and some asshole posts like this is a net zero, fully sustainable, floating city for 1,000. And I'm like, and it's going to be built by Saudi Arabia. And I'm like, nope. And,
Well, like-
and in the comments, they're arguing with like everyone who's like saying this is stupid. This isn't solar punk at all. Not even aesthetically, you know. And they're like, but it's gonna have zero. It's fully sustainable. It's gonna have vertical farming. It's gonna have all the things.
Cool.
And they're listing all these fucking just like this video. And it's like, dude, you're not getting it. You're not getting it.
No.
And
Are these people going to be? Sorry, I just want. Are these people going to be cut off from consumer goods? Are they not going to be able to buy cell phones and stuff like that? Like you can recycle and compost to your heart's content, but this is just modern society makes waste.
It reminds me of the new book. I mean, a recently published book about the escape fantasies of the tech bros, of how like they know that society is going to collapse and they're going to escape it. They're building themselves bunkers and whatever.
And Peter Thiel's of the world, and
then this journalist or the researcher was asking them like, well, what about when this like and he's showing them around their compound, like, well, what if that breaks and the supply chain is there? And he's like, and he turns to his secretary and goes like, make a note about that. Investigate supply chain.
Oh man.
That a lot of this techno-utopianism, and it does go into that. It's utopianism versus what is the Bookchin line about like, we don't need utopianism, we need something else. So, I mean, the Moneyless Society kind of read an excerpt from him. I'm not going to find it today. But anyway, I did find I just typed in Peter Joseph on TYT. He does a 40-minute full interview I have a expedited version that's 8 minutes. But
Okay.
basically, it's not worth it. It's just a lot of points that are repeated, and we know them.
Sure. Yeah, if you
But
just want to link it, I'll put it up in the chat at least.
sure. He does confirm that he does not call it communism. It is not communism. He gives the same kind of foo-foo reason that he just glances over why it isn't communism. That look, it's not about being communist. It's about building a society instead of an anti-society. So it's always just saying like it's not communism because it's doing this different thing, which is not what any communist ever was trying to do, I guess. But again, it's like throwing shit on all other leftism so you can be post-left. Because the left is dead and there should be something beyond it, I guess. We can't be left anymore because the left is dead. But there's a pessimism in that to me. Instead of trying to revive the left or resuscitate or rebuild it, you're just saying there's no hope. It's dead. It's like again, I'm going to keep using the Star Wars metaphor. What if everyone was like, no, we don't want to bring the Republic back. Republic was shit. But we need to do something, this third thing, but we can't build it under the Empire. So, or we don't want something that isn't the Empire because I don't know what would be the version of that. But again, no, we don't want the Republic. We want to build this new thing that isn't the Republic at all. It's a new Republic.
Yeah.
And then it turns out to be just as corrupt or whatever. I mean, we don't have any media yet from Dave Filoni describing the problems with the New Republic, but yeah. But the book series kind of say that there are centralists who want to centralize, and then there are those that obviously don't want to centralize because that's the problem with the Empire was. Yeah. So he does the thing where it's like it's not communism. Anyway, but he does in this interview with TYT, that's where it's like, okay, Zeitgeist isn't complete bullshit. There is something there. Anyway, the next video. Let me go to the bathroom first, and you can discuss. Maybe ask James what his thoughts are if he's still there.
Sure, yeah. He's probably
Okay.
No problem. All right. Thank you for the follow, 2D Man. Appreciate it. We're looking at Utopias right now. So we're just talking a little bit about I guess the Venus Project is part of the Zeitgeist movement. Personally, I like the Zeitgeist movement. I admire that they're at least, aspiring to build something, and not just sit around and dream and think about and read books on stuff. But it seems like they actually do want to put stuff together and actually organize enough people that and maybe they're a little wrong-headed in the orientation. I don't know how much they get hung up on, well, it has to be these off-grid eco villages, we have to have a clean slate, rather than organizing with the circumstances on the ground in established cities. Because I just don't see any sort of rural movement ever really having enough power anymore, really. I mean, rural America is so dominated by large corporations, whether it's mining, whether it's, gas and oil or agriculture. It doesn't, there's a reason that small town America is dying, and it's not just Walmart, and it's not just that there's nothing to do. It's that virtually everything is owned by large outfits. So I hope they're not just focusing on rural eco villages.
My roommate's cooking something good.
Oh yeah, what are they cooking? You don't know? It just smells good. Or...
Zach?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh,
am I frozen to
connection.
You? Oh no, I can still hear you.
Shit.
Oh, I guess, yeah, not anymore though. So, Blatjevig says, there is incentive for opponents to platform or promote ideas that alienate us from our past lessons and successes, along with those still engaged in the struggle that grew from those past movements. Whoa, you are orange. You're
back
back,
in?
but you were orange. It looks like you have a filter.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Weird.
Yeah,
There we go.
it's adjusted now.
Just adjusting. You were frozen on my end.
Yeah, I don't know. I could still hear and see you, so I don't know what happened
Anyway.
there.
So,
Anyway, moving on.
we're moving on to the one I like, actually. And I'll explain why when we get to the end of it, as we go through it, I guess. Paracon, participatory economics. So it isn't really about who's the owner, though. Commons, it is a commons economy also, and it does not shy away from saying it's communistic, though it doesn't have to. It just says, look, we're not doing 20th century socialism in that. We're not reliant on centralized planning. This is participatory planning. So that's the main difference between the other techno-utopians and other utopian projects is as much as they'll maybe tokenly say like, also it'll be democratic. But they themselves are terrible at meetings and don't know how to do direct democracy. So they don't expand on that much since they don't have experience in it. But participatory economics was actually developed by old lefties who were literally, anti-war organizers and trained Marxists. And basically by the 80s, they know where 20th century socialism is going. So they developed their kind of, third way, which is simply to say neither, state nor bourgeois capitalism, but the participatory economic, it's really more of what would be the 21st century way of implementing communism. So, and that's kind of what the edge it has is it doesn't take a particular strategy. It can be a kitchen sink approach to how to implement it because it does have multiple institutions that can be taken piecemeal. You can work on them independently or it can be done more piecemeal. It doesn't have to be we have to transform society all at once, which is sort of there are a lot of intermediate steps you can imagine for doing a participatory economics. Like if we have that co-op economy, we can do a co-op strategy. But once we have fully gotten there, then we can switch to a paracom, or they could do that, or they can be doing it while we're doing co-op strategy, while we're doing municipalism, while we're doing union syndicates or whatever. It can all work with this. They're not in conflict. So anyway,
Cool.
This is the only Paracom video that's short. So it's not pretty, but it's more funny. It has more of a sense of humor than the other ones do.
Well, that's good. Let's take a look.
The other ones are so dry and bland, and that's something else we can complain about.
All right.
It's the adventures of Morton and Clarence.
Good evening, Clarence. How was work?
Terrible. Johnson got the big promotion.
That's too bad. Well, maybe if you try harder next time.
It's no use. I worked extra hard on our proposal, and Johnson took credit for all of my effort.
Well, nice guys do finish last in free market capitalism.
Here we go again with the pinko talk.
All I'm saying is capitalism rewards the kind of antisocial behavior that Mr. Johnson is exhibiting.
So what's the alternative then? Centrally planned socialism?
Of course not. Centrally planned socialism has a proven history of giving disproportionate power to the coordinator class, resulting in inequality.
Right. So while capitalism may have its weak points, it still is the best option for a fair economy.
Well, there is another option.
What other option?
I'm talking about participatory economics.
Participatory economics? Sounds like another one of your commie plots.
Participatory economics, or Paracon for short, is an economic system that eliminates the grossly uneven distribution of wealth we have in the United States, while also giving people incentives to work.
I like how he doesn't try to animate it. You don't have to.
No, you don't.
As long as we listen to orders handed down from the Kremlin.
Not so. Paracon is a system of democracy, where everyone has a voice in decisions in an equal proportion to how much the decision will affect them.
Really?
That's right. Paracon's core values are equality, solidarity, diversity, and self-management.
Alright, I'll bite.
how does Paracon work? Paracon is made up of several principles and institutions: workers and consumers councils, balanced job complexes, remuneration according to effort and sacrifice, and participatory planning. Everyone in a Paracon system belongs to a workers' council where they work and a consumers' council where they live. In participatory economics, no one person owns businesses or means of production. They're owned by society. So in every workplace, decisions about how work is done and who carries out which tasks are all decided collectively, not by a boss or a manager. The same is true in your neighborhood. Decisions about how to use the city's resources are made by all those who will be affected by the decision. So I can have Joe Blow from across town deciding what kind of flowers I have in my backyard, right? No, Clarence. Like I said before, everyone has a voice in decisions proportionate to how greatly they will be affected by that decision. Here's an example. Let's say you want to put a picture of me on your desk. But I don't. Alright, let's say you want to put a picture of Lindsay Lohan on your desk.
I love that.
Yeah.
Now, is that a decision that needs to be approved by the entire workplace? No, because the decision affects only you. Having the entire workplace decide is unfair and inefficient. But let's say you want to put a loud radio on your desk. I like Metallica. I know you do.
Yeah.
Now that is a decision that not only affects you, but affects those around your desk as well. So in the decision, some of your colleagues would have some say as well. So Joe can't tell me what kind of flowers I can have in the backyard? Only if he uses the backyard also. 'Cause I like tulips. Great. In Paracon, balanced job complexes are the way in which work tasks are made equal for everyone, even across workplaces. Workers' councils who are familiar with the type of work done in their workplace give every task that is done in the workplace a rating based on the amount of effort that is required to complete the task, how fun or empowering the task is, or how uncomfortable or even dangerous the task is. The ratings for the tasks that one worker is responsible for completing are averaged so that the list of tasks, or job, is given a rating. Within a workplace, tasks are divided up so that everyone has a fair share of empowering tasks and tasks that are not empowering. This is also done across workplaces. Some workplaces, such as the coal mine, have an average work rating that is lower than others. Across society, all of these work ratings are averaged to give an average work empowerment rating for all of society. Tasks across workplaces are then divided up so that no one in society has an uneven share of empowering tasks.
Can you pause?
How does that work?
So I want to point out, and this is something we were kind of getting at with the with our past example talking about jobs, is or skills, in education, is that there kind of needs to be a flattening of skills, even either between inside of workplaces, but it's also like it's also kind of assuming that your job is going to be like a career or at least something you do long term. Because if you're going to learn all the different skills needed to do all the different tasks in a particular workplace, then there's sort of a time investment in that and a resource investment. But there's also maybe a sunk cost where it's like I went through all the trainings to do all the different tasks of this workplace. It would really suck if I had, quit or, didn't like anyone there or, had to leave or I really wanted to move to somewhere else. Right. So there'll be kind of I'm not going to leave my job because of, healthcare insurance, but because of all the sunk cost that I put in, either personally or because society, covered all the training, whatever. But maybe that's kind of the freedom that like you can get all the trainings and still say no to the position or what have you. Because I'm just thinking about my own office, right? My office is one where we are. It's an office that reviews projects for school districts, so that they're safe and clean, and there's more standards because we don't want kids to die, and sometimes we're doing some of the work of the architects because we're checking all their work and whatever, and it's basically a team of architects, team of engineers, 2 accountants who review the finances. They do some of the support for the finances, and then we have financial associates who review all the financing for the project. Now, of course, in the commons economy, maybe the financial side of things doesn't matter, but with state aid and the state is paying for most of the projects, let's say, and that's why we get the say, like we need to review it because we're paying most of the costs. But it's also, we'd still be reviewing them, I think, because back in 1940 there was a school that caught fire and 12 kids died, and as a state we decided that's not going to happen again, and it hasn't happened again since. But let's see. But okay, so me and my cohort Nate are the support staff. We're filing, we're doing the paperwork, so to speak. We're organizing the paperwork. And if we were to be on the same level and to be able to do all the empowering tasks of the office, we would need to not only maybe need architecture. Well, I have an architecture degree, so I guess I'm halfway there. But I'd also need to be licensed, and that requires an amount of firm experience, the ability to review projects, and that takes a certain amount of architectural, experience. You almost need to have previous jobs in order to do certain other jobs. So there is kind of a pipeline, and that's sort of how state employment works, where you are hopping. You don't usually stay in a position that long because, well, there's a career / income ladder you can climb,
Right.
and you're gaining skills along the way, or maybe you're doing a similar job, but basically as you go up the pay grade, you're doing more analysis. You're not just filing things anymore or stamping in the mail. You're doing analysis, you're writing policy papers, you're doing coordinating, and politicking or whatever at the highest levels. And but again, so what the point I'm making is, though, that in order to flatten this like job empowerment, which is where the people came up with Paracom, or like what really causes inequality in our economy, not just ownership and private ownership structures, but also you mentioned coordinator class, that you have different classes of professional versus non-professional, and that's the class structure we have in state work. That there's literally two different unions, one for the non-professional and the professional, and there's literally a class dynamic of working and professional class, PMC. And in order to get rid of that managerial class, you need to deprofessionalize the workforce. So when we talk of building socialism, I think, and this is something maybe I need to be more of a booster for and make a certain campaign and memes to deprofessionalize work. That it's like there seems to be, and deprofessionalizing is not the same as not having skilled labor, but I don't know, to that when you have a certain skill that required a certain amount of resources, like the experience of being an architect, going to architecture school, it's like it makes no economic efficiency sense for me to, like, if I work in this office, I'm required to, or it is fair that I also be able to review the projects. Now, as far as my mother's concerned, I should be able to I should be able to interview for the for a position when one of them opens up. But I don't have the experience reviewing projects. I do not have any of the required experience to be hired for this, and I do not feel comfortable doing that because it's like would definitely I'm the person who needs my projects reviewed. If I need to be doing that, I need to be on the other side first for a decade.
Right.
So it's like you gotta start from, not start from scratch, but deprofessionalize almost for that to make sense, to say that we can all be equal and we can all have a similar pay grade as a society, so that we don't have these huge ranges of the person who's paid $100,000 a year and $20,000.
Right.
Even though that amount of inequality would be pretty sweet compared to,
it's not that bad actually.
20
compared
to
what
20
we got.
billion.
Yeah. Right.
But then you still have a coordinator class who has all this empowering work and information. They're able to analyze the information, be an effective citizen, planner in the even if it's all horizontal, they're going to monopolize the meeting time because you'll have workers who are deferring to the professionals, and that is not horizontal. It's not democracy. It's still a class system, but it's not based on
I can see
capital.
what
It's
you're
not
saying.
based on
It's basically
other
on
things.
seniority and just being in the right place at the right time for the right length of time. Quickly to answer your question, 2D man, this still falls under the umbrella of socialism because the workers would still be owning the means of production. You're getting rid of the owner class.
And it's not post leftist, the Paraconists. So that's also why I kind of like them. They're not post left. They're like, no, this is still a commons economy here, and we're not saying it's not communism, but it's not state socialism. That's what they make clear, because they're not on the shallow end, which is what they're critiquing with other utopians.
Yeah.
And for the person above them, Black Jig, you're right that deprofessionalize is probably the wrong term, because like there was another type of again, because we don't want to confuse people by saying like, well, there shouldn't be skilled labor or specialization, not despecialize. But a professional is a particular class of worker. I think that's what we mean by like not having that class of worker. Someone who is licensed and has permission to do certain things that other workers aren't. You know, you have people who have all the skills of a professional, but because they don't wear the right clothes and they don't conduct themselves in the bourgeois middle class manner, they aren't allowed. You know, like how often on a resume or on a job interview, it's like, can you conduct yourself professionally? Well, that's a test saying, are you middle class bourgeois material? Do you have the right mindset and way of speaking? You know, do you use enough? Do you use, if you're slang is I'll put it in racial terms. If you have enough slang in your vocabulary, you're considered unprofessional. So that's where being professional is tied into being white and
middle class,
all the supremacy that comes with it.
Sure, for sure.
Let's see. So bureaucracy and red tape that prevents competent workers from performing a task. In some ways, yes, professionalism is invoked in that way, that you have more merit. Who determines merit? The professionals determine merit in bureaucracy, and so the more professional you are, the more merit you have, not how efficient what your ideas are. That's some of the problems people have with bureaucracy.
Gotcha. Yeah,
and that bureaucracy sells the idea that if we just have rules that everyone follows, we're all equal. But all those rules seem to reinforce these power dynamics.
Sure.
And that's Graeber's work.
Interesting. All right. Well, let's continue on. So I would like to get to the last video too.
If I work in an ice cream store and Joe works in a coal mine, well, Joe wouldn't work in the coal mine every day. Sometimes Joe might work in the ice cream store and you might work in the coal mine. But I don't know anything about coal mines. People would still have jobs that they are trained for, but everyone would have an equal share of tasks that weren't fun. That brings us to the next principle, remuneration for effort.
So that kind of goes back to the thing you brought up about the 9th day.
Yeah.
So it's like, I would, if everyone in the office I'm in, it was all reviewers and no support staff, but one day a week, each of the reviewers did my job. You just need 10% more reviewers in the office, but they have, 3 times the salary that I do.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we're talking about a post-wage labor economy.
Right.
But now we go into what kind of wages do you get? So,
system, some people have jobs that require a lot less effort than others. In Paracon, balanced job complexes would change this. In Paracon, everyone has a balanced workload, so everyone is also paid a standard rate. You wouldn't earn more money because the ice cream store you work at makes the most popular ice cream. You would earn money only based on how much effort you used to make the ice cream. So if you wanted to earn more, the only way would be to put in extra hours at the ice cream store.
Sounds like
Likewise,
rewarding
if you
failure
decided
to
you
me. If you're not popular, then you should go out of business and fail.
Yeah.
But
That is
what it's saying is you still get paid at the end of the day, though. That's what it means. And then if your business is not popular or it's not socially efficient, then you do close your doors. If you get help from that, say that technical organization mentioned in the first by the ownership economic, the Mondragon Corp kind of
sure.
thing. After enough help from orgs like that, if they can't save your business even after all their help, then you simply dissolve. Your resources get split up for other businesses in your sector, and then you basically need to find a new job, which is pretty easy as it's all planned out. There's jobs open.
Right.
You look for opens up.
Pick a new job,
roles.
basically. Yep. Right. Interesting. So, I mean,
you go to the employment office instead of the unemployment office.
Right. Yeah. Well, in this situation, what determines whether a business is unsuccessful then? Is it just, number of customers served? Is it satisfaction?
Social efficiency is the
efficiency.
Metric. So if the resources you use, it's a ratio of resources used and social production, basically. Are you producing something socially valuable?
Okay.
And it has to be higher than the resources you use. So if your ratio is less than 1, then you're not efficient enough to be supported by the commons. Sure. If you are, then of course.
So then, who? I would assume then who gets to make that decision would be everyone that's affected by that local business. Like that's the way it's done then.
Yeah. I mean, deciding how to start a business or close a business.
Yes. Yeah.
Otherwise, if it's the ratio, then it's like the whole society is basically saying no. But it's facilitated through the planning board, which is the fourth part.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
As much to get by, you could decide to work less hours if time off was more valuable to you. Participatory planning would make the economy run more efficiently than it does now. Workers and consumers' councils work together to estimate the supply and demand of every product in the economy. Prices are then adjusted properly. They're not set artificially high or low, as can happen in market capitalism. Prices will be adjusted so that they reflect their actual cost on society. How is that different than capitalism? Take gasoline, for example. In our current system, the cost of gasoline, as high as it may be, does not factor in the costs on society that the pollution created by the gasoline will incur. The pollution is an externality that neither the producer nor the consumer of the gasoline is paying for. In a Paracon system, all of this would be adjusted so that the products will have their external costs on society properly reflected in their price. Well, all this sounds well and good, but it seems like there are just a lot of issues that you haven't addressed, besides the fact that I don't see how a system like this could ever be implemented. Well, it may interest you to know that there are many businesses out there that have implemented the Paracon model within their workplace. You can read about how they are making it work at paracon.org, where you can also find out more specific information about how Paracon works. That sounds great, but I'm just a cartoon character. That's true. That's why it's up to you, kids. That's right, kids. It's up to you to implement new economic systems. If you want to learn more about participatory economics, have an adult help you go to paracon.org to find out more information about this revolutionary new economic model.
Thanks, Jason.
Right. Yeah.
Actually, good name.
That's pretty good.
So, besides the fun level, do you have any further questions? Because I've read quite a lot, so I'm kind of an expert.
No, this is it's going to take a bit for this to sink into me, but I like it in general. Yeah. I like the idea of evening things out even beyond getting rid of ownership class. I like
it's also assumed it's also assumed that you have like a economic floor UBI type.
Yeah.
And that the remuneration is in the form of like credits, like Star Trek
Sure.
Federation style credits
Sure.
that you use at and on the consumption side, stores and sellers or places of consumption are managed by your consumption council. So
Gotcha.
So
yeah,
they're not businesses on themselves. They're actually like the community center will have all of the library of things basically.
Yeah.
But you're actually getting them. You're getting them with
That's
the
cool.
credits.
Yeah, I like this idea quite a bit. It sounds pretty close on to the economy and society that was described in The Dispossessed, the book I was mentioning earlier. Yeah.
Who wrote that one?
Ursula K. Le Guin. So
Okay.
she was trying to come up with an anarchist society that lived on a moon of basically a parallel Earth.
I think
parallel universe Earth. So yeah, so like the anarchists got so popular that like, well, they're going to destroy all of our businesses. Let's just ship them off to the moon. They can have the moon. No one wants it really.
Oh, okay.
So
I see.
so they set up this entirely new anarchist society. They came up with new language to get
what
rid
you
of.
don't know about fascists is that rather in practice, fascists or capitalists, that it costs too much to export people to exile. That's why the final solution became just gas them.
Yeah, right.
Because the first plan was to exile Jews to let's put it in Attack on Titan terms, Madagascar, because that was one of the ideas. That's where Attack on Titan gets the idea of, oh, it's in Madagascar. Other times there were these other far off areas where we'll send all the Jews, and then they'll have their state or country. But that, especially during the war and towards the end of the war, that was no longer viable. So, final solution.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And it's something Stalin was also into doing as well. There was the Jewish province that's like, okay, we'll just have all the Jews move there. Ugh. They're still in the Soviet Union, still have full rights, but we're gonna give them like a really rough place to live. And it was mixed results, but obviously they didn't get the support they should have had, of course. And but it was it wasn't.
I mean,
it wasn't a gulag at the same time, but it was still a rough place.
Great,
rough place to be. It was covered in Jewish currents. They covered it fully.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's basically what we did with the Native Americans too, with just shuffle them off to reservations.
Yeah.
All right. That was cool though. I would like to learn more about this because this sounds like a cool.
So the last video is a more let's actually like start this new economy. How do we actually do it? We still need to fundraise a shit ton of capital to do it, but at least it is a project to fundraise for. It's a literal tangible project. Though actually it isn't tangible enough because it's just the concept of what the project would be. So it's called Ubuntu, which I kind of told you beforehand. I don't like when white people use African words. Just, I know we don't want to be Western, and it's like, look, European does not need to equal capitalist. We can use European, just like the canon, It's like, oh no, I have to. Well, there's plenty of African anarchists as well and communists. So,
or just like create a whole new word if you want a whole new thing. It doesn't even have to actually come from anywhere. Just make a new word. Why not?
Anyway, been a while since I watched this actually.
Hello, I'm Michael Tillinger.
I do not.
And I'm the founder of the Ubuntu Liberation Movement. Welcome to the launch of our new strategy and plan of action, which we call One Small Town Can Change the World. So, what is our plan? First, we find a small town of around 5,000 people who want to participate in their own makeover, their own salvation, their own rescue mission. Then we find consensus between the people, the mayor, and the council. We identify the special skills and talents of the people We identify the industrial and environmental potential of the town. Then we develop a razor-sharp business plan for a variety of community projects to match these skills and individual potential. These projects are actually meticulously well-planned businesses, but there is one huge difference between these and other businesses. These belong to all the people of the town, together with the investors that made it possible. Everyone in our town who participates in the transformation will contribute 3 hours per week toward...
What's that?
I said the investors are going to want something, though. I mean, what do the investors get? You know,
Yeah,
if they're not really investing for an ROI, then they are donating.
Right.
But I suppose the assumption is maybe there will be an ROI. But if there is, and it's going to investors like venture capital, then it's more like you're doing not state socialism, but let's say it's municipal socialism.
Sure.
But I do like the idea where everyone kind of, it's organized volunteer labor instead of kind of having a network of, if not network, but a bunch of community orgs and projects, and people are kind of, it's a marketplace, it's chaotic, and they have to outreach to people. What if everyone in town was actually required to volunteer with an org to develop a community project, a commons economy?
Sure.
So I do like that, but it needs to be, that's municipalism. You have to, that's something on a municipal level. But of course, there's probably constitutional problems with that, requiring volunteer labor from everyone in a residency. But that's where you get into the consensus where you look, you're not actually legally forcing it or requiring it. It's a social contract that everyone's agreeing to. But
sure.
It's like the critical problem with this strategy is finding a 5,000 size town or village that would all agree to this.
Right.
I think it would be more viable to collect 5,000 socialists and then buying up an abandoned village or town.
Yeah.
Or moving to a town of 5,000, so you're half the population. That's how you get the free town project that the libertarians did, but where the libertarians were just, their agenda was actually devolving local government. We would actually be, using the government to do commoning.
Sure. Makes sense.
It's one of these new projects.
And it's a little inhuman to say all of you socialists need to uproot your lives.
Yeah.
That because we've all been building our lives where we are,
right?
Not only personally, but our own communities.
Yeah. Yeah, and I understand the appeal of the clean slate, the green field or whatever. But yeah, like you say, you're going to get the kind of people that are able to uproot their lives, and you probably need a wider variety of people to actually make things.
Those are all
work.
Losers.
Well, I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying. But no, you just
it's what comes to mind for me, though. People who are tetherless and they are searching for something, which means they're also the same people who get snookered into cults and and other such scams.
Yeah, it's like I couldn't do something like this. Like my kids live in the metro area. I couldn't just uproot myself and move way out there.
But in a sizable city, you probably could collect 1,000 socialists to
within a city, sure.
Within a city,
So definitely. That I like a lot better.
So finding consensus among all the socialists in Albany for a commoning project, also pretty tough considering all the different ideologies and also. But could all of them commit the 3 hours?
Gotta get over it.
Will they stick to that? I mean, getting the commitment is also the problem. They won't commit to it because it's like, I don't know if I can give 3 hours a week. But also how to organize it, how much. But yeah, getting a skills inventory is like that itself is like a canvassing project, even among like all the volunteers I have already. But it's something I could do.
True enough. Yeah.
This creates a powerful free labor force that no other corporation can compete with. Then comes a really critical part of our plan. We analyze how much our town needs to consume of everything we produce. And then we produce at least 3 times as much as we need. We can do this with ease because our cooperative labor force. Everything we produce is distributed freely to everyone who participates, and the other 2/3 are sold on the open market to our neighboring towns and cities, or even exported if need be. But herein lies the twist.
Big
We
assumption
sell
that you
whatever
can
we
make
produce.
3 times what you need.
Yeah, with just
I would
an
be
extra
impressed
3
if you.
hours a week.
I would be impressed if you just made everything you need, because when
Yeah.
it comes to the food production, it can be
Sure.
pretty efficient, but you still need a certain amount of labor force. And if it
Mhm.
is just a matter of 3 hours a week from everyone in town to grow enough food, just talking about food production,
Mhm.
maybe it would be enough. But then it also becomes like, well, once everyone's getting what they need, what are their job? I mean, we're talking probably about a village or town where like no one really has an actual viable job, or high unemployment rate, high amount of
Sure.
meth addiction.
Yeah.
But then you
Yeah.
actually have to do all the health work.
Right.
Produce cheaper than any other supplier. How is this possible? Because of our free labor force and the ingredients that we supply ourselves. And so, in a strange twist of fate, money will become the tool that destroys capitalism. It becomes clear that contributionism devours capitalism wherever it may be. This will lead to a substantial
Like sure, this could work in theory on the small scale, like
You're
a
pressing
village
X to
decides to
doubt.
do this. Yeah, a little bit, because what if everyone's doing this? Like, first of all, who are you going to sell to? If everyone's producing all of their own needs plus, another 2
Another 2 times
shares of that
on the open
like,
market,
on the
but-
open market, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Who you
at that point, who are you
selling
going to
to?
sell? Maybe you don't need to sell anymore at that point. I don't know, but
Well, to me, it sounds like, I mean, that surplus, you would put that back in. But if
yeah,
your surplus, I mean, is saying like, we need to sell this for dollars. Well, if everyone's getting what they need, what do you need dollars for? But I
right.
assume, well,
I guess it'd just
for
be for the
things that need to,
extras,
for things that need to be industrially produced,
right?
because a village or town is not going to be able to do industrial production. You're
Well,
not going to
sure.
get. He had a little bar of steel there. I don't think your town's going to have its own steel mill and its own hospital and its own everything. It's not.
I
I
mean,
mean,
not to
it's
mention
what are we
salt
living in?
mine or
Are we living in Sim City land here, where
we can just do everything.
you don't actually, yeah, it's just assume like, oh, you have your industrial district. I guess you're making everything an industrial city needs.
Yeah, good point too, Blatt. Every town's not going to crank out its own mass transit cars, or let alone electronic consumer goods.
Then you say, well, towns specialize. Well, that's what we had back in the 50s, where every town was a company town, or every town had its factory, the thing that it made. But then by the 60s, all of that was either the businesses like weren't needed anymore, they're outmoded or obsolescence, and all those towns died. The Rust Belt exists. It's rust because of the industrial model, because the production was outsourced, or it was consolidated because of low transportation costs. Instead of having a state where every town can specialize, you have one city that makes all the buses, and they make all the buses for the whole country.
Right.
And so every other town that made buses, goes broke. And that's how we get these big metro areas that have all the jobs and all the wealth and all the economic activity, even when they're not, they don't have that much manufacturing, but let's say they do. But all the manufacturing is now in China or elsewhere, where the labor costs are cheaper. So he's basically saying with volunteer labor, we could actually have economically viable manufacturing again. And so that's kind of how we bring that. Maybe that would be the selling point on this for people who aren't socialists or ideologically driven. that if you want your industrial job back, or if we want that to have that, then you have to volunteer for it. It almost has to be free. But it isn't really free, because we're actually going to get all those manufactured goods instead of getting them from Walmart and paying for dollars. You're going to get it at the town store.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, only got half the. We're through the half. We are through half the video already. So let's see where they go with this.
Yeah. It's
income stream
Still
from all our
feeling pretty
projects very quickly. From food to technology, healthcare to music, tourism to engineering, and so much more that would not be possible in a capitalist model. Why? Because it would simply not be financially viable. Set your imagination free and imagine how much wealth our little town will create from just 50 new projects. But what do we do with all this money? We keep it simple, as we always should. 1/3 goes to the investors or the farmers or the factory owners that turn their businesses into a community project. 1/3 goes to upgrading and maintaining.
Wait a minute. He's talking about getting rid of capitalism, but we still have factory owners, and we still have.
Yeah, I think that's what was kind of what explanation point above my head. It's I think I liked this video more for like the idea of kind of starting at the scale of a town instead of an eco village. Eco villages are just too small.
Definitely is worthy as
an idea of getting a large enough group of people to volunteer 3 hours a week as part of a compact to build a commons economy, because that's the scale we need. And that's the scale that Co-op Jackson kind of has.
Yeah.
But there, instead of volunteer labor, it's co-ops. They make the co-ops, and they're doing it within one city. Black Jig points out that it could devolve into a company town, with the municipality being the company in this case. So it kind of becomes sort of a state socialism, unless you have really highly conscious workers. Now, if all of the new businesses or the community enterprises are like worker co-ops, the people will become more conscious just through how things are operated. And that's the important thing, that it's not the municipality just managing everything from a central bureaucracy at town hall. It is coordinating a bunch of community projects, and he puts it at the scale of like 30. The thing is, certain groups or organizers, they're doing 30 community projects, but 10%. Or that's what it feels like with building socialism, that we're doing 30 good things, but we're only doing it with 10% effort or 10% resources needed.
Right.
Whether it be IWW organizing, third-party organizing, all of the co-op strategy. It seems like we're just not putting all of our cards in one basket, because we shouldn't. We don't want to. How to overcome that is, and then I think we overcome it by just having enough scale. We just need more converts. We need more people involved. We need a social movement that gets funneled into these projects instead of the Democratic Party or consumer capitalism or something. Buying the right thing.
Right.
Maintaining and constantly creating new projects based on the needs and skills of the people. And the last third is distributed equally to everyone who participates in the projects. This provides for an elegant and
no matter how much or how little or what contribution. I mean, I guess you could. But
let's imagine that they're doing ballast job complexes and they're doing enumeration on. That's why you shouldn't take any of these like in isolation. I think you need to take ideas from all of these different things.
Sure.
And combine them, and that's the only way it'll ever make sense. And that's kind of where like the weakness of some of these schemes is that they haven't worked things out like the paracommunists have.
Right.
They worked out how to actually distribute surplus and whatever. You do it through council communism.
Sure. Okay.
simple transition phase. No one has to leave their job because everyone has 3 hours a week. And very soon, the people of our town will be receiving more money from community projects than their jobs, while getting most of the things we need to live for free. As this abundance begins
Which
to
is the
grow
point I made.
and our town becomes
So people can transition away from wage labor into this commons labor.
Sure.
wealthy beyond comprehension, new projects will start up every week, giving expression to the creative talents of our people. One by one, the people who work for the mines and other dangerous industries will leave their jobs because they earn more money and benefits from contributing only 3 hours per week and without any resistance.
What do these projects not include? But what do these projects not include mining and growing food? And
we're just
not
do that anymore.
I think my idea would be we take the surplus since we're making so much wealth. We use that to buy the mines and the other businesses because now you're not when you're talking about those types of things. You're not just talking about one town. You're talking about a whole regional economy, which of course is the bioregionalism we want to aim for. So you got to think of that scale, actually, not just the town, but you got to start with something.
Indeed.
Big size.
Opposition or conflict, the nasty corporations will close because nobody will work there anymore. And the existing system will simply shut down and
they'll
fade from
get
our
the
memory
guns out and say,
as we create a new system.
You're going to go back to work.
Yeah, right.
That's where the gun's out. That's where they go mask off.
Right. Yeah.
As they eventually do, which was occurring with was it strikers or just there's a drop of people applying to work in the mills because of cooperatives, and you literally had like liberals advocating for like, can we get these workers back by gunpoint? Like they don't want to work.
Right.
When they complain, people don't want to work anymore. Like I think we were joking about this. They are contemplating how do we basically it becomes you criminalize not working for a corporation. You arrest people and then you have them do prison labor. So they were working for a corporation anyway.
Right. Yeah. The last time this country had a real general strike, they rolled out the military immediately. And it did not end well because they claimed that they were doing a revolution and that they're destroying our way of life, which is exploiting the hell out of all of you. But that aside, they did not take kindly to it.
It's odd that, and this is where we kind of have to be careful with our they were able to claim that. And this is where like I do not want to do this, but the whole we don't want to be too far left because then it gives the right ammo to use against any positive movement. So it's like because the IWW was part of that general strike, agitating for militant labor action, they are only made up 5% of that unionized workforce, right? But because they were there, that's what gave the government the wherewithal to say we need to put it all down with the military. And at the same time, you also had a lot of those labor unions, the more liberal ones, saying like, "Oh no, we're not revolutionary. We're not like with the IWW. We'll stop the strike. We don't want to take this too far. We don't want to upend the economy. We will make a deal now."
Right.
Which is sort of what happened in Japan, but it was also forced by they had the military occupation. Forcing their hand. This was right after the war ended, by the way. There was this month after the war where there was a chance at a socialist revolution. There was a general strike underway because conditions were pretty bad. But things and union organization went up tenfold in the year after the war, but you had the military occupation of American forces, led by the most anti-communist person, MacArthur, and he basically held a gun to the head of one of the main organizers and said, "I'm going to kill your family if you don't call off the strike." There was something like that. It was definitely threatening.
I believe it.
Unfortunately, he didn't say, "Do whatever you want. I'm not going to call off the strike." I think he folded. It was probably more to it than that. But
I mean, gun to your head. Jeez. Don't think we could fault anyone for caving to that.
and a new social structure. At this point, we realize that we don't need money at all. And yet, we have more money now than we've ever had before. Everyone will know that money does nothing, and people do everything. And so, in a strange twist of fate, we use the tools that enslave us to free us from that slavery and build an unshakable foundation in which the tools of enslavement have no more effect. There has never been a simpler way to unite the people and create abundance and prosperity for everyone. And there has never been a more lucrative investment opportunity to conscious millionaires to participate in creating a true...
conscious millionaire. Sure.
Yeah.
But I'll put because you do need that like startup capital for a number of things, especially if you're actually going to do manufacturing. But I can definitely kind of translate this project idea to something that's like just you have a community org, right? That's a commons economy kind of org, and you organize people, you do the canvassing, you outreach, and so let's say you can get a membership of 30 people, and it's like membership requires dues in the form of 3 hours in one of our projects, and we're going to talk about and agree on what the projects will be, which is the hardest part. I think you can get a group of people together, but agreeing what community project to settle on is when you can't settle on it, and so you end up just like, well, let's do more talks and study groups
Right. Yeah.
to get back around to where we started.
Yeah.
But that would be where and that's kind of how things work now. You have your community projects that maybe tie into a commons economy later, but they're not building one, at least the way I see it. So what would be the right project that really, I mean, there are commoning projects. There's a library of like, what are commoning projects? So maybe that's something we could investigate next together, or I do something on my own.
That sounds pretty cool.
Because it's something, orgs like the Greens kind of always have people interested in doing such things. Otherwise, volunteering for pre-existing orgs and help them, because they need volunteers. They need people putting in those 3 hours a week. And the more people they have, the more they can do and expand their operations.
Absolutely.
Whether it be, say, tenant organizers or something like that. So anyway, we're at the end of our time. So let me just point out, I did a new episode. I haven't uploaded it yet, of What's Left in Albany. That's my logo. It's at the moment a default logo because I haven't thought of a better idea nor a better design. The other one was so easy because it was just flags with text.
Right.
With Albany, I feel like it needs to be a little more dynamic,
a little more personal.
I need to commission a graphic designer. This case, you don't know it, but that's Nipper. That is a large dog statue that's it's on top of a 3-story industrial building called, I think it was the RNC building. And it's about 10 feet tall, so it's a pretty known local icon. Nipper.
Cool.
So I just have Nipper with a red flag there. Anyway.
I like it.
But people were they weren't totally down on it. I don't know why, but I just can't imagine something else. I want something that communicates a worker power in Albany, but what would that be? Is it something that's not too abstract? Because then if it is abstract, it's not Albany related anymore.
Yeah.
So I interviewed someone who's in the neighborhood who has basically she was doing a business where it was like taking green tech developed in America and using Chinese resources because they're abundant to upscale and commercialize various green tech because it can't be commercialized in America because America fucking sucks. That's what it comes down to. We actually can't commercialize good things because of all the reasons that we may be aware of. But she also her first thing she mentions is lack of engineer base, which is odd. But that's why there's so much we need we need more STEM majors because we just do not have enough. We have to import engineers from China and Africa. But I'm like, fine. I mean, we're gonna have a big migration of them anyway in the future. That's how
Right.
That's how America's always kept our population stable
Oh,
and
yes.
growing, even if we want to talk about that. But oh no, that means less white people. So the
Oh my
only reason
God.
you
Queer
don't want to
replacement.
import labor or have migrant labor is if you're white supremacist, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you're just a xenophobe.
It's if you don't want Nigerian engineers, because they just have more people there now, and that
Mhm.
means more engineers because they have public colleges.
Nice.
If we really want more STEM majors, we need free education. I don't know. I'm sure all of us lefties make that argument, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
It's fucking stupid how we'll incentivize it with higher, I mean, but or about their way of seeing it is those are the high paying careers, and we want kids to go into STEM fields because they'll be paid better.
Right.
Because they're definitely not going to be getting it through union contracts.
Right.
Higher pay.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking losers.
Yeah.
So anyway, she lived in China for 20 years.
That's really cool.
She really appreciated the collective ethic of everything, even though she moved there when Dengism was going into effect. She got the tail end of things there that way. And let's see, what else? She's trying to make an art gallery because she got from the culture ministry I don't know if she bought it or it was gifted to her, a collection of artwork from a local artist in China, from a town where most of the people live in caves.
Whoa, interesting.
These are cave houses, by the way. They're not literal, just caves, but cave houses.
It's
In
built
fact,
into the side of a hill. Yeah.
where her first husband was from, in fact, she said her first husband's family owned 8 of them. They were landlords.
Oh my.
And they were killed in the revolution, though at the same time she was saying that his family were also in the Revolutionary Party before the revolution, so they were in the Communist Party.
Interesting. So
I was getting a mixed message, but maybe parts of the family, I don't know. But anyway, she moved. She was invited to move here for position that RPI offered, because she was go between tech and executives, and moved to Albany and found a second husband because her first husband left her with the 2 kids they had. Sad. I didn't ask further, but she comes across as a liberal girl boss type, kind of, because she when she complains about society, she just kind of complains about individualism and consumerism generally. But then when I was scratching about her background, it's like, no, she's actually cool with communism or socialism, but she just doesn't, because her career has been talking in the corporate sector and stuff. That's her skill set is corporate, and
Of course.
so she's not good at actually doing community projects, even though she thirsts for it. So it's a weird dichotomy there.
Interesting. Well, that sounds like a really cool episode. I'm definitely gonna check it out this week.
Yeah, it's all interviews now for the most part, so
That's cool,
I won't
though.
do them
I like
until
that.
unless I have a guest, and but I'm not going to focus on it until the station's where I want it, and I've been
For sure.
lacking in
Makes
that
sense.
because
Makes
the
sense.
lack of just work I don't want to do. It's not fun at the moment. It really sucks.
Yeah. I got you.
And I'm doing it alone.
Yeah, I mean, I guess hang in there. It seems like it's
Thank
a
you.
worthwhile endeavor, and I'm sure there are a lot of people that really appreciate the work
I'm
you're
I'm
putting
assuming
in. So.
there just needs to be when we hit a certain point that I require the others to throw a party for me.
There you go.
And that I don't have to organize it. It's, if I have
absolutely.
to
Who wants
facilitate,
that?
if I have to coordinate the station and having a party,
Mm-hmm.
come on.
Yeah, no good.
So,
right.
Good night, man.
Yep.
We
and
both have work to get tomorrow, even though
Yeah.
I actually I shifted my schedule. I go to work at 9 now.
Hey, there you go.
Which means
That's nice.
I get up at 8. 8ish.
Hey, that's not too bad at all.
Yeah, I love it.
All
I can
right.
have breakfast
Well,
and make lunch.
it's been a great year doing this stuff with you. This is gonna be the last show of the year we do together. Our next one will be in the new year. So
2023, baby.
2023,
Everyone's like,
here we go.
don't touch anything. Don't touch anything, everybody. No, touch. Mess
That's
it up.
right.
Touch
That's right.
everything. Fuck that sentiment of like, oh, I don't. Everything needs to. Everything's messed up, and yeah, of course it's messed up. We gotta fuck it up.
Absolutely.
You're
Right.
acting like, oh, I just want things to be stable. Well, guess what? It's not. It's not gonna be stable.
Not going to be.
Accept
Capitalism
it.
can't generate stability.
Fight
So,
it.
all right. Anyway, thank you for being a great guest this whole year, and I look forward to our endeavors together next year.
All right,
So,
love you, man.
yeah, love you too. Have a good one. All right. Last show with Dan of the Year. That was fun. Unfuck 2023. Great sticker idea. I love it. Print them up, Blatt. I will purchase a whole pack of them. Thank you all for joining tonight. I have 3 of you there, so I'll pick someone to raid into. So stick with me here. Thank you all for joining me this year. I will have one more show tomorrow night of the year. That's going to be our last time. Oh no, that's right. We're hiking tomorrow night, so I'm going to move it to Tuesday or perhaps Wednesday of this week. We'll see. I'll keep you all posted. But we're going to do People's History of the United States one more time this year, and then it'll be into the new year. So, yeah, looking forward to that. Thank you all for coming on this ride with me and sticking with me. I wouldn't do it if it wasn't for y'all. So, let's see. Who are we going to do? I think we are going to do... Thanks for the comments from the Peanut Gallery.
Hey, you were threatening to take away my hike.
No one's threatening to take away nothing.
I ain't gonna hike in the woods and I'm never gonna come back.
Okay. Thanks for that. I just misspoke. We're going on a hike tomorrow because we couldn't get one in this week. So that's what we're doing. So I'll raid you into Echoplex Media. Always a great, can I finish please? Always a great channel. Check them out. Echoplex. Have a great night, y'all. Here goes the raid.